What should I call you during the interview? You can call me John. What do we want to go
Yeah,
by?
Freddy, whatever, Fred. I don't really.
Freddy or
I'm
Fred?
not bothered.
Hey, I'm it's not,
Whatever feels best to you.
it's really whatever feels best to me is whatever is gonna feel best to you. Hence I'm going by John instead of my full name, Jonathan. Because if you start calling me Jonathan, it'd be like, oh my gosh, my parents are here. Where?
Yeah.
That would be a little
But
weird.
don't go calling me Frederick. That would be a
Oh,
bit of a disaster, I
I know it
think.
would be
But
Freddy. Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, no, Fred or Freddy,
Anything
got
else is
it.
good.
All right, so we were just talking about old school video games, Age of Mythology, and that. So gaming, has it been part of your whole life? And we'll head back to that conversation.
Oh yeah,
so.
for sure, man.
Do you remember
For
what your
sure.
first game
Like
was? Or go for it.
first game. I don't know exactly, but I like my most vivid sort of early gaming memories are like Ratchet and Clank,
Nice.
Jack and Dexter. Was it Jack and Dexter?
I think so.
Something like that.
PlayStation? Is that what you started with as your system?
Yeah. PlayStation 2 was my first. So I'm kind of late to the party. I think a lot of people are like they're on the early Xbox or whatever, right?
Well,
But I'm yeah.
I was.
PS2 was the first.
Nice. It makes me feel any better. I think I was on that same train. Like my first handheld was the Game Boy Color. My first system was the GameCube. So I was Mario Party, Mario 64, Smash Brothers or Smash Brothers Brawl, not Brawl, Melee. I just offended some people in chat. Melee kind of a kid. I know PlayStation was a great one, and also no, Time Splitters was a popular one for that. You remember what your first PC game was?
Yeah.
Bring back
PC
some
like. Probably was like one of the Command and Conquer games, to be honest. Like maybe Command and Conquer 2.
Nice. Was that Red Alert?
Was it Red Alert? I don't. Yeah. Red Alert. Yeah. And I played Oblivion was quite an early PC game for me as well because my aunt got it for me, and I was when I was quite young.
Do you have like a mind-blowing moment you hit Oblivion? So for me, I've never done really the open world stuff. So when I saw Skyrim, I'm like, whoa, what is that? I remember my first whoa moment was Guild Wars. If you ever tried it, I'm like, can a computer really do it? It was my first MMO, and I was like, the graphics are good. I'm like, what is this, master? Like, it just can't exist, and then did. I wonder if Oblivion was ever like that, where it's its own crazy genre, or maybe it wasn't like that for you. Who knows?
Yeah. It's weird. It feels like it should have been, right? Because it was such a like I can look back at it and be like, wow, that was so innovative, and like for me, like it should have been a mind blower. But nah, I think I was quite like not quite old enough to really appreciate all the the intricacies of the time, I guess you could say.
Yeah, well, it's a game. Like at the end of the day, they mean a lot more, but at the same time, so sometimes it's just like, oh, I got to dabble here, enjoy this game, move on, right? So you might not. Pokemon
I wasn't like. I didn't play it a ton, right, or try to finish it or anything. It was just sort of
yes.
Yeah, I think it's like that when you're younger, right?
I also think that early on in the video games, like these days, we all sit there, pounding away at the review sites, watching like 6 videos, trying to get the early access, understand. Yeah. But back then, it's just like you show up and you're like, oh, this random game sounds neat, let's do it. So I remember like Sonic Adventure Battle 2. I think I didn't get good reviews. I loved it as a kid. I put like 400 hours. And it is not considered a great game. I think some people like it. I really like it. I probably still would like it, but back then it's just like you try a game, you like it or you don't. And you run with that, and then you start getting your classics. So what are some of the games you felt like are most influential, or that you have the fondest memories of back then?
That's a good question. Yeah, probably Star Wars: Knights of the Old Republic was a real. That was really like, yeah, that game was so sick, and like a really sort of formative experience, I guess, in many ways.
That's awesome.
And probably Ratchet and Clank. Like Ratchet and Clank was so, like I think that game was just really good and just like super appealing to like kids as well, and just like at that point it was just games are my life, kind of like games are so fun. I just want to not do stuff in the day, and I just want to play a game because it's what I mean. Like
no, and those are some of the games that people like consider the classics, right? Ratchet and Clank has a series. Blows people's minds to this day. Knights of the Old Republic is the game that everyone's like, hey, do you want to play a Star Wars game? Then look, ignore all the new stuff. Play the original Battlefront, maybe the original Battlefront 2, and then you play Knights of the Old Republic, and that's it. Just do those 3, maybe Lego Star Wars if you're feeling really bored, and like just don't touch the rest. Coming up a good first impression. I like it. So one thing I actually couldn't find is, what do you do? So are you a full-time? I don't think you're a full-time content creator, or maybe you are. I couldn't really figure it out. So
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, right, most like full-time content creators, you think like Spyro or something, right?
yep,
Or
100%.
some kind of like Dr. Disrespect, right? And they're pumping out the content, they're like on the
Mm-hmm.
stream every day, they're like grinding really hard. And I don't know, man, like my approach to life is like super laid back, and I'm like I should probably like, yeah, I
Mm-hmm.
don't have a job. I don't do anything other than streaming videos,
Wow.
like tournaments occasionally. But yeah, I'm just pretty laid back. Like most people are sort of, they're really trying to get as much money as they can, right? And like
Uh-huh.
improve their like living conditions and shit. And I'm just, I don't know, like I'm quite okay to be in like a small apartment and just vibrate and like,
I
yeah,
like that.
just do stuff when I feel like it.
No, and that's your jam, and you can sustain that, enjoy it. I really have a lot of respect for that. I think some people are, when you think of streaming, and I think it's one of my critiques of a lot of streamers, where now, ironically, I'm in the middle of this right now as I'm doing it full time myself, but I am not sustainable currently. I'm eating savings, and eventually, goal is to make that beautiful U-turn and make it sustainable. But
Mm-hmm.
I find that everyone sits there and like, I need 20 to 30,000 people watching me, or I will not be satisfied of my content. I need 1 million subs, a popular Instagram, and I gotta get it all. But I think the people that chase that dream, they'll get there, and then they'll realize, wow, I didn't want 1 million. I wanted 10 million subs on YouTube. I need 300,000 people watching me, and it just doesn't really have an end. Where you chase this fame your whole life, and you get to the end, you're like, oh, like what just happened? Well, it sounds like you've, I feel like, figured out, ideally, in my opinion, like the like top tier way to live your life, which is figure out what you want to do, find a way to make it sustainable, and then you do that, and you live a good life. It's a pretty simple formula. So I have a lot of respect.
Yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't feel like I've cracked it or anything, and I do have days where I'm like, I should be more productive, or is this, maybe there's something else that I should do, or I haven't achieved my like full potential in the streaming or in the YouTube, or like I think everyone feels that way sometimes, right?
Yeah, well, I feel like
Yeah.
everyone always feels that way because you always sit there. I think there's like, if you're very self-reflective, one thing that at least for me, that comes up a lot is, am I hitting my full potential? Am I doing everything I really could? But it's also a very self-destructive thought because it's very hard to define what you can do. And also, there's too many things to do. I could be a politician. I could be a lawyer. I could also be a streamer. I probably can't do them all. So no matter what I do, and then when I get even in the world of streaming, for example, like a quick content choice, like I could make a piece of content that's really good for Twitch. I can make a piece of content that's really good for YouTube. But it's very difficult to find one that's good for both. So all of a sudden, I have choices too. Like, where do I want to grow on a day-to-day basis? So I find that to be complicated. But have you made it work? If I don't mind me asking, like, are you just like, you figured out a way to make this content creation side work, and you are going to be able to sustain this?
Yeah, I mean, I think like I'm just in a super lucky position, right? Because of the tournaments in the early days of Gwent. Like, I managed to get quite a lot of cash from that, and I didn't like go spending it and stuff. I just invest, and
I love that.
I think just investing is like a super. I mean, it's very hard to get enough like money to make it like actually worthwhile, right? And actually sustain you. But if you are able to, then I think it's just like kind of a no-brainer, right? The money turns into more money, and then it's you're just kind of chilling out, right?
I love it. Personal finance is actually why I used to work at. I don't know if you're in the UK. Is that right?
I'm in Poland at the moment, but I'm from
Oh man, that's a giga brain move. That is so smart. I love that. So I have a financial background, or one of my backgrounds, I guess. I had an international relations college degree. I worked in the medical technology, and then went into finance, which all doesn't make sense when I say it, but that is what happened. And now I'm doing streaming. It's like, ooh. But I used to work at Vanguard, this really large brokerage company. And so I left because I wanted to teach people personal finance, but it sounds like you figured it out. Because it sounds like you basically figured out investing. You figured out they should move to a place of a low cost of living, and then you just go with that. Because once you hit those two, there's a combination of get your expenses low enough, get your investments high enough. It's you can coast the entire way. You're never going to run out of money. And
yeah, exactly.
How did you figure that out? Because I will say, in the United States, which is where I am right now, financial education is something that's super lacking. And that the fact that you figured it out, figured out the formula, says a lot about you. But how did you figure it out? Like, what's the secret? Where did you learn?
I don't know. I just kind of like, to me it was kind of intuitive, right? Like you want to live somewhere that's cheap,
Mm-hmm.
ideally, right? If your money is not tied to where you're working,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, I mean, saving money in general is just like yeah, it's just a good thing to do. And I don't know, like as a person, I'm very saving more than spending
Mm-hmm.
in general. Like, I have siblings and they're a bit different, maybe or whatever. But yeah, personally, it's just always been something that I've been doing, and I don't know, didn't
No,
get any information or something from somebody, but
but you figured it
yeah.
out, and you figured out how to invest and make it work for you. I love that. That's so awesome. I was curious what everyone does with their tournament winnings, because like for example, if you look at lottery winners, at least in USA, most of them will. There's a high chance they'll go broke within like 5 years. High chance of
Mhm.
like getting murdered. It's a miserable experience because everything goes
Yeah.
bad when you get someone who's been playing the lottery, which is not typically a good financial investment. Bunch of money. Tournament winnings have that pseudo
Mhm.
sense of you have to be really good at a game. You have to be very smart, but it doesn't mean you have to be financially smart. But you got the full package. I give you a lot of credit. Love that.
Thanks, man. Yeah, I think I'm pretty sure like Colamone is very, and Game King as well, because I talked to him quite a bit. They're very, and in fact, in some ways, like I think there's like an influence from your friends as well, right? Like if your
Hmm.
friends are investing and also doing that kind of thing, then maybe that's like pushing you in that sort of direction as well. But yeah, I think
Hmm.
Colamone is another example of someone who's just sort of very with it when it comes to the financials, and yeah.
Yeah, I think that's key, and I think it's yeah, I think it's also particularly key for content creators, where if I were to say, okay, I need you to go, let's say content creation is stopped, I need you to go apply your skills you picked up creating content and playing Gwent to another career. It's a tough jump. Like, you're
Mm.
not in being an insurance agent trying to sell
Mhm.
life insurance, sitting there with your cards, being like, all right, look, we're gonna have 3 rounds, and if you lose this game of Gwent, you sign this policy, make me a bit of commission money. But I think that's beautiful because it reminds me also of high level athletes, where particularly in United States in college, they won't make a lot of money, but they'll have fame, but they'll sacrifice their education. They'll leave and they realize their skill is basketball and apply it elsewhere. But you've been able to take
Yeah.
your skill and set yourself up for your future. That's awesome. Love it. And now you have this,
Yeah, yeah.
get this freedom. But it sounds like
Yeah, I
though.
feel I feel super grateful about it.
Well, you
It's,
feel graceful, but I also want to hone in a little bit more now that we have this kind of like established you're set for the moment.
Mhm.
How do you weigh the day to day? You mentioned sometimes feeling really dissatisfied with how much you're producing. What are you producing? Tell me how you're weighing that, because you have this freedom, but there's always a cost of freedom, which is that constant pressure of what should I be doing with this time that I earned that I'm so grateful
yeah, I mean, it's just a bit. It can be a bit tricky, right? Because I'll like wake up and I'll like not having a direction or a purpose or a feeling of I have to do this to survive, or I have to go to my job because otherwise I get fired or whatever. Like I don't have
for. Hmm.
that pressure, so it's all on me, right,
Yep.
to make something happen.
Hmm.
And I don't know. I can be quite a lazy person. I think a lot of us can be if there isn't that pressure.
Yes.
But equally, like I don't know. It just depends sort of how I'm feeling. Like one month I might be very into, like for example, now I've been playing like a lot of Gwent, and I've just been feeling like streaming, and it's just gives me purpose, even if it's like it doesn't have to be about money or
Uh huh.
like anything like that. It's just I want to do this. It's enjoyable. It makes me feel productive and satisfied at the end of the day. Uh, and other times I'll just be like a little bit mopey. I'll just play some games or whatever.
Hmm.
Um, I don't know. Like
Uh huh.
it's not always perfect. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. But yeah, that's part of the deal, right?
No, it makes a lot of sense, and I think one thing that a fallacy I think people have is that money will fix everything, or fame will, whatever it is. Touched on slow earlier, but at the end of the day, once you get there, you have this freedom, but then you have the difficulty, the problem of freedom. Structure isn't there for you. You've broken free of the system. It's on you to make your new system. Uh, do you have any tricks though when you're in a bit of a mopey place? Because people, when I worked in corporate and I had a bad day, I'd still go to work and I'd say I hate everything here. Oh, I'm just in a bad mood. I'm in a bad mood. Everything here is
Yeah.
not helping me. But at least I can outwardly blame it all. When you work for yourself, you don't have anyone to blame. But like, oh wow, I woke up and I'm feeling crap today. I don't want to do anything. but it also might make me feel more crap tomorrow when I don't do anything today. How do you rationalize and get through those mopier periods?
Uh, it's kind of tricky. Like I have definitely found myself kind of struggling in those situations sometimes. Just particularly like before Masters, because I sort of had this idea of the tournament, right? This big tournament at the end, which was like a thing that I'm working towards, and it'll eventually happen. And even if I don't do some stuff now, then I'm gonna have that sort of lined up in the future, and I have a purpose and something to do
Yes.
later on.
And a goal.
And yeah, that was sort of always there in the background, like, it's fine, like whatever. Like maybe I just won't do much for a month, right? But
Yeah.
at the end of it, it's gonna be okay. Now I don't really know because that's not even there anymore, right? So if I find myself entering that, I'm probably just gonna have to sort of be like, maybe I need to be creative, or like I quite like doing stuff on the piano and just there's always been something about like I need to find a different creative outlook. I was even like experimenting a bit with just doing different kinds of videos and yeah, things like that. Like doing something a bit different and trying to enable yourself a bit.
Yeah. So how do you do that? So right now, I eventually my goal is to have your problem, but then I of course will have that exact problem where I'm in the stage personally of trying to become sustainable. But the moment I am sustainable, it's like, oh, I have your problem where it's all free. What do I do next? What goals are you thinking about setting for yourself, or do you not view it as setting goals anymore to help you get through not having an end destination, right? There's no more big tournament up ahead. Now you can still qualify, climb the ladder, and I have full confidence if you want that, you can do that. But now you have this, you right now can pick a goal effectively. How are you going to go about that?
Yeah, these are the kind of like I'll phone my mum up, right, and have like a like an hour-long call about this kind of thing because I'm just like, Mum, help! I'm lost. I don't know what the
I respect
what
that.
the
I respect
what the
that.
goal is here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I don't know. For me right now, I guess it just changes, right? There's not going to be, I don't think, a fixed goal that I'm going to have from now until like 5 years from now. Maybe there should be. But for the moment, I'm sort of just thinking, I'm gonna play some Gwent. I'm gonna maybe try to qualify for tournaments. If anything else sort of appears, like sometimes there are random opportunities that come your way, right? Like I don't know, you'll get an email from some other card game, or maybe they're running a tournament, or maybe there's opportunities for sponsorships or whatever,
Yeah.
right?
Otherwise,
Or
make a bit
maybe
of
there's
money.
some other
Doubles.
game that comes out, or not necessarily gaming related, but yeah,
Yeah.
like anything, right?
Yeah, it makes sense. It
So
sounds.
sort of just
Please.
Yeah, I think it's just about picking like a shorter term goal, right? And then just sort of
Mhm.
flowing with it, seeing what happens, and then yeah.
Working from there.
I,
I respect the idea of shorter term goals. I think some people are like, I have a 5 year plan, and historically 5 year plans have not gone well. History, I don't know, slam down, smack down, something like that. I don't know. I was supposed to find something really witty to say there, but I thought the joke was funny. More importantly, though, I like the idea of shorter term goals where you don't really like. If you were to predict where you were in 2 and 3 months from now, what you were doing, it's surprisingly hard, even for somebody who has a very structured life. Of like, I go to work, I grind on my job, come home. Maybe later in career, it's a lot easier for someone there, but in your early 20s, 30s, it's a lot more volatile. Maybe you'll switch jobs. Maybe economic depression will occur. Maybe you'll find someone to fall in love. Maybe that person who you're in love with will break your heart. Like, a lot of things can happen. So I respect the idea of saying, I'm going to take the opportunities as they come. I'm going to be looking for them. When I see an opportunity for a tournament, another game, sponsorship, music, whatever it is, I'm going to say that will be my goal for next month or two. Give me some purpose there and pursue it. I like it.
Yeah,
So,
I've had sort of periods like that where maybe I'm like, oh, I'm really into poker right now, so I'm gonna just gonna play poker for a month and see how that goes, and maybe lose a ton of money or
yeah.
whatever, right? Or yeah,
Yeah.
videos and stuff. But I mean, there's also like things I maybe want to do longer term. Like I was
Mm-hmm.
thinking it'd be cool to be a pilot and
Wow.
like have a conventional job for a bit, maybe. I don't know, like, but it's also something that it's just hard to motivate yourself to push towards, right? And
Yeah.
I think
Mhm.
we mentioned like earlier, that you can't do everything, right? Like you want to
Yes.
make the video for YouTube and for Twitch, and I was thinking that life is almost kind of similar, right? You can't
Uh-huh.
like in general, it's almost like you can't do everything you want to do. Like you maybe want to be a pilot, but also a firefighter and a policeman when you're
Mm-hmm.
younger or something, right? And you
Yes.
can't really do all of those professions. You kind of have to pick a life
Yes.
which, goes down a few paths
Yeah.
and
You
not
can't walk them
not doing
all.
everything, right?
Exactly. And I
And that's
think
kind of sad,
mhm.
right?
Well, it's sad. It also though reminds me a lot about, was it Iliad, where Achilles commented how beautiful human life is. This is gonna be super random, but Achilles basically pointed out that look, gods, will always have a bit of envy of mortals because mortals will die. They will have a finite amount they can do, and in that, effectively, their life is like beautiful. Their achievements are beautiful because there's an end to them. Gods are endless and they can do everything. So in a sense, all their achievements will always get done, and so it doesn't really matter. But I will say it's really sad, but
hmm
also something beautiful about like having the responsibility to pick the life and the path you go down. Doing your best, you're gonna botch a bunch of it. I've botched a bunch of it, but there's a beautiful act in that. You mentioned, so we did, for people who are tuning in now, we talked a little bit prior, like 5 minutes before the call, mentioned a bit about philosophy. I'm a big fan of a philosopher of ice. I really like Alan Watts, and he describes life as
hmm
music, where you aren't trying to rush to the end of it, trying to like rush to retirement or rush to the end of a career. You're trying to enjoy the flow of the song of life, right? If music was all about rushing to the end or hitting a goal, the best conductors and the best songs in the world would be like one note. You'd be like, done. And that
Yeah.
would be it. It'd be a freaking masterpiece. But the point of it is to have this journey and to have ups and downs and know you can't hit every note simultaneously. It'll all be like jumbled. So it is really sad, but I
hmm
also think it's
hmm
very beautiful as
Yeah, yeah.
mhm,
And
mhm,
yeah, I think maybe the way to live life is sort of to think about like when you're old and on the deathbed, as it were, right? Like
uh-huh.
if you're looking back at the life, you want to just feel like just made the most of it essentially in whatever form that is, right? And I think
I
that's a
love
good way
that.
to sort of live it.
But I think about that all the
Uh,
time. As morbid as it is, to an extent, I do think that society's, at least United States, relationship with death is probably not a healthy one. But I think about that all the time. Like, imagine just being, it sounds like it's what you're doing, but sitting in hospice, right? You're about to die. You're alone. It's 2 a.m. and you've come to the realization, we're going to let you die of old age. You can't move. You can't do anything. You're there. And you realize you're going to die in an hour. You feel yourself getting to the weak to the point you're going to pass. You're not going to be near anyone to talk to. Can't move. There, your future is gone. It's going to be gone in a half hour, hour. The present, you can't do anything. So you just have to look at the past. And there's this, like, I feel like there's a very cathartic moment when you look back and say, how did I do? What really meant a lot to me? Where I feel like if you keep having that thought before you hit that point, you're going to go down a better path. Path again will have
mhm.
ups and downs, but feel bad for everybody who hasn't had that thought, hasn't reflected on what really means a lot to them. Because I feel like people are saying, like, I'm going to endure this now, I'm going to
Yeah.
endure this now, I'm going to endure this now. And then they get to the end, they're going to be like, wow, I endured a lot. And what happened? Well, I'm about to die in an hour. And it really sucked. I was like, I want a do over, but I'm
Mm.
not, depending on my beliefs, I'm not sure I'm going to get a do over. I give you a lot of
Yeah.
credit because feel like that's the right philosophical spot, especially for someone, well, I think for everyone, especially for someone like yourself who's having to deal with this absolute freedom. You freed yourself from something that gives a lot of people structure, which is money. Now you have to sit there and say, okay, if I die, like 50 years out, what do I want to say I did? What do I want to say
Mhm.
that, like,
Mhm.
this was my accomplishment? These are the people I've met, the things I've done, places I've went. Am I content?
The
Because there's no,
legacy.
yeah.
Mhm.
Well, what is a legacy, as Hamilton would say? Um, I feel like, but tell me a bit though about legacy, which why you bring that one word up in particular.
Yeah. I mean, I think in some way everything is about legacy, right? It's just about
Mm-hmm.
because it doesn't really matter like once you're dead
Mm-hmm.
what you did for your own self, right? Like
Uh-huh.
it's mostly about sort of how the future will remember you, whether it's like your relatives or like children that you have or
Uh-huh.
just friends that you made, right? Like in some way, I think, I mean, it also is to feel that satisfaction within yourself that done things in your life that you're proud of and happy of, sure, but that's going to be like a fleeting moment towards the end of life potentially, or maybe not even. But I think you get what I'm trying to say, right?
Yeah, I see what
Like
you're trying to
legacy is
say.
an important part of it as well.
Let's talk about that because it's so interesting. I have a slightly different view on it, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. I feel like it creates good talk. But I feel that there's going to be a moment where no one remembers, right? So if I were to ask you as the third person to be a politician in Poland, I would be shocked if anyone remembered. Or the third person who opened a barber shop in Germany. Like who knows? Who knows? But they each have to rationalize the understanding that they're going to be forgotten someday. That their legacy will not live on in the memories, but what their impact was on the people they impacted. And in a sense, yes, I feel like there is this carryover to the future. Your rippling effect across time. But paradoxically, I don't think it can be done in memories. It has to be done in yourself, knowing that your actions tipped over dominoes in the future or just was genuinely beneficial to everyone you impacted. So maybe if I'm a barber, for example, I'm not going to sit there and be like, all right, I have changed the course of barber history by inventing a new way to cut hair more efficiently and make everyone look better. But your impact might be, hey, I made 100,000 people look a little bit better. I know, and they were able probably to accomplish their goals a little bit better because they walked into a room and they felt confident about how they looked. So I feel that legacy comes from the actions, not from the memories and your children or their children. But that's just my personal.
No, I'm with you there. I think that's exactly it. It's the action, right? I mean, in some way, like I think children are a way that people can sort of like gain an actual legacy without having had to have necessarily do an action that is even, like good or providing something to the world, right? Like that's maybe a way that people sort of sidestep the need to extend the legacy through them of doing nice things, for example. But yeah, it's kind of hard to pin it down and like say, this is what's important, right? Because at the end of the day, it's all just, it doesn't really matter to anyone but yourself, right? What your feeling is on this at the end of the day, and you're going to be like, regardless, you're going to be dead at the end of it, and it won't matter whether you have a legacy or not, realistically, right? It's just sort of a feeling that we're trying to have to sort of comfort ourselves about that.
Yeah, well, I feel like it depends on the person, right? So me and you probably we're talking about legacy, and I think it's to an extent it's important to us. I also feel that right now, like if I were to die tomorrow, I might not have accomplished everything I wanted to, but I was in the process of it, so I'm content. And I think there is a sense of personal satisfaction that comes from a legacy, even though technically it's not required. Mentally, I think it depends on the person, but I like it. You seem to like it. Other people probably like it. So I think there is value in having that thought of like, what do you want to be, or even it doesn't have to be a legacy, but going back to like the big picture with that idea of being able to look back at your life just before you die and find yourself content, not regret, but content. Doesn't mean you didn't screw up along the way. We all will, but and I'm sure I have many more screw ups ahead, which are going to be great. But I think there is some value in having that thought, and if it manifests as I want a legacy, and I want the legacy to be children, societal impact, or just me feeling content that I did a good job with what time I had, like that's fine.
I think the interesting thing here is like we're talking about like the end of life, right? And reflecting back on it and feeling content. But it's sort of it's more that feeling should be there to enable you to live the whole of your life with that sort of feeling of contentedness. Do you know what I mean? Like
100%.
It's not so much about those final moments or even like the last 20 years of your life. It's about even now living here as you are, you should be doing things and feeling like you're progressing that contentedness, right? Within yourself, like the entire time. I
completely agree. That the thought of dying and looking back is just an enabler to figure out what you should be thinking about and doing now. It's a way to just try to make sure that you're on the path. Like the worst thing that you could do is not have that thought. Live your life, and if it turns out you're living it for a reason you don't want to. So the classic example that Alan Watts would point out is living your life to to retire. You're building up to it. It's like you're almost there. You're just thinking,
Yeah.
chug through 40 years in the corporate, and you get there. You're bald. You know, your hair's gone. You have a fancy red car, and you sit there and like you're old. Your energy is low, and you're like, I've made it. I've made it. And you're like, look back, and you're like, well, what did you make? Well, you're in a wheelchair. You can't move a lot. You can't accomplish the travel dreams you had. You have a rich car. You have, a bunch of money. But like, are you content? And if you look back, if you have that thought of like before that, and when you're like, right now, if you're watching this right now, have this thought. If you're about to find out you're gonna die soon, you're 40 years ahead. Just visualize it. Look back and say, okay, would I be content with what I'm doing? And if you're not, pivot. So if it turns out you'd be much more content of a simple life in the wilderness, spending your time amongst the deer, maybe having a small farm, you should be doing that. Screw society's idea of, building a bunch of wealth and that's the definition of your success. Like if that's not your jam, ditch it. Now for some people, that is their jam and they should, but they should make sure that they do that exercise. Think about their selves being about to die and say, wow, I'm really happy that because I have $50 million in a bank account somewhere. And that is everything I wanted. And I'm very content to die. But I don't think it's going to apply for most people here. So I think it's a thought experiment, but you shouldn't be living for the moment of I want to be content, look back. You should be living it in the moment, enjoying that you're on that path, enjoying that music. I love it. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
You mentioned, as we delve into this, before we really turned on the interview cam, that you really like philosophy. Is this part of that liking? Or are there other parts of philosophy that really intrigue you? Tell me about that.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I've just got a brain that really just enjoys thinking and like especially about the deeper sort of things and the questions that are not necessarily answerable, right? Like since I was young, I was just always like really fascinated by stuff, concerning God or life or just existence or anything like that, right? And I studied it at school. I started studying it at uni, but didn't really go too far with that. And I've never been sort of reading a lot of, philosophical texts or anything. So I'm sure, I could very well imagine you're like a lot more proficient and knowledgeable in sort of,
Wait, me?
various. I don't know. Like
All right.
I don't have
So
any. Like I haven't
let
read
me
any like Kant or like whatever, right?
let me teach you a trick, Freddie. And I might be wrong.
Yeah.
I used to do the exact same thing you just did. Which is when I talk to somebody and they sound really confident, I'd be like, here's my opinion, but you might know a lot more. And I remember I was walking with somebody in college and I gave my opinion. I forget even what the topic was. I said, you might know a lot more than me. And he's like, oh, thanks, John. And then he gives his opinion. And I remember his opinion being so terrible and uninformed that I just sat there and I'm like, I just devalued my opinion. How dare you not devalue yours significantly more because your opinion sucks. It's not well researched. You put no effort into it and you don't care. Like, so I'm challenging you to never say that to me again. Just give me your opinion. Because you clearly are very bright. You put a lot of thought into this. You're a thoughtful dude, and I like it. You're also very smart, not just in gameplay, but like you're chilling here like, wow, I figured out finances, so you're really good there. I am constantly contemplating my life's purpose. And God, like, come on, Freddy, don't sell yourself short. You're doing great. Tell me about God. Like, if you don't mind me, let's go big picture. If that's what's on your mind. What do you think about God?
Yeah, no, sure. Yeah, God is a really interesting thing. I don't know what I really, truly, personally. That's a lot of words, but
no, go for it. It's God, for Pete's sake.
What I really, truly, personally believe about God or just what's going on in the universe, right? I think it's just sort of impossible for us to know really anything, and like we can always. There's comfort in suggesting that we might know something or to feel like or to guess at something, right, and say I think I might know this or this could be a thing, this is a hypothesis, like any of that stuff, just whatever. We don't actually know, it won't be provable, and yeah, that's kind of a sad thing, but at the same time, like once you realize that, you can start to sort of entertain any thought about what is going on, right? Like you could say, well, this is like, I don't know, maybe like our knowledge is almost so small of everything that it's possible that even the concept of us having knowledge about this is like wonky. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
no, I feel you.
it could be the case, like, like who knows? Maybe we're just playing some kind of a game, right? And we wake up, and this life's been a game in some other like not necessarily a game. That's my
It's
point.
some,
Like even the concept of a game is like confined to our experience and our life, right?
all I
Like
can,
who knows what this even represents, right? Like
yeah, all I can think about right now is like, my Freddybabes character is having an existential crisis. Freddybabes character having existential crisis.
yeah.
Quick, use the inventory item. Get him chocolate. Feed him. No,
Yeah, for sure.
I really sympathize with that. So I was raised Episcopalian, but then became an atheist. But I agree with your sentiment of not really knowing, where it's almost impossible. Like it is impossible. And we've seen a lot of people take shots at it, and they're like, the gods are on Mount Olympus, and we went up to Mount Olympus, and we didn't find anything. And now we're at this point where like, we're like, man, I don't want to offend people, but like, it's like Jesus is coming back, and it's been a lot of years. It's been a lot of time for a second coming, and the dates, move up, and some people are like, this is the end of the world, and nothing happens. A lot of predictions. There's a real feeling. Like I'm not going to say that any faith is right or wrong, but I will say that no, I mean the miracles of old aren't really producing right now. Kind of. Like I look at the computers, I look at the internet, I look at the structure of existence, and I say, wow, there's really like real thought that went into this. So that also makes me really disturbed. Like, wow, okay, so maybe I'm not seeing somebody coming back from the dead anymore, right? I have it in a book, and some people believe that. Other people believe, oh God, what is that? They're all over the place. Many gods,
like reincarnation.
I'm not seeing that, but I will say there's a beauty to it all. Where I'm like, wow, it's super strange that fire comes at this temperature, or it's really convenient that this planet is just far enough away from the sun that we're not burning up or we're not frozen over, and we have an atmosphere. And I think that's really interesting. I will say when I talk to people and ask me what my religious beliefs are, I say I'm an atheist. Not because I necessarily am. I can't really prove that there's not a God. I could argue, honestly, because of the structure of everything, to me personally, that there's probably a God, but I can't prove anything beyond that. Because, like, there's a difference between something created the order of everything, and there's another jump to that something actually interacts with us, or wants worship, or has a set of rules that they care about. And so I identify, though, as an atheist because I want to have the debate with religious people who are like, this is what God wants. I'm like, that is a really bold jump. There's a lot of books competing on a lot of different ideas. But
I think that's exactly it, right? It's like religion itself, like all of the ways you could explain or try to understand how the universe came to be and what it means, all of this. Like they're all in some way equally feasible, right? Like it could be it literally could be anything. Like we don't have enough information. Like it's kind of arrogant even for us to assume that we could understand like, well, this is how the universe came to be. But okay, sure, that's what it looks like from this perspective, but we don't have the bigger picture, right? But like you're saying, like religion can quite often be trying to make those jumps, right? And trying to say things that are just not really logical in any way, or that are just purely like faith-based. And you could say purely faith-based things about other sort of systems of the universe coming to be, or how it all interacts. But that, they all have the same value, right? That's kind of the beauty and the frustration of it in a way.
Yeah, I think it goes. Oh man, I could take this a bunch of ways. So I think there is one of the reasons I like being the religion is because I feel that people pick their religion, right? There are a lot of religion options to choose from, but I think it says a lot about the person what religion they pick, and then what practices they take from there. Because like if we look at the Bible, it's a really thick book. There's a lot written in there. Even in the first 2 pages, there's a contradiction of what you're supposed to do with the world. One page says you have to take care of it. You're the gardener. The other page is like, it's yours. You just own the place. Go wild. And that's like 2 pages in the book, and you're sitting there like, this is going to be complicated. You're going to have to make choices that I feel very much reflect on the person. Where some people are going to take religion, do some really great things with it. Other people are going to take some religion and do some really terrible things with it. I feel like it goes back to that purpose, though. And I think it's ironically the same purpose that you're wrestling with now, where you're in this life, where you're trying to live your life to the best of your capabilities. And in your case, you have extra freedom, because Freddy, did I lose you? We went infinite. I repeat, we've gone infinite. We've lost Freddybabes. We have a technical difficulty.
Hello?
Freddy, can you hear me?
Yeah. Sorry, my Discord sometimes randomly closes.
No
It's a
worries.
sign from the gods.
Sign from the gods. Well, now the question is which one, but hopefully we'll get like a lightning
Yes.
bolt soon, to let us know which, depending on who. Where was I? I had a train of thought. Oh, I feel like now that we're back, there is collecting my train of thought. It's like going from technical difficulties to instant snapback, negative over, get your mind kicked back in the gear on the high level. Collecting the thought.
I've lost it as well. What
It's okay. I'm gonna get it. Give me like 20 seconds of silence. There we go. So it is. I feel like that the wrestling of religion, historically and now, is the same feeling, same idea that you're wrestling with when it comes to finding this purpose in life, this reflection, trying to maximize what you can and feel content at the end. Where one answer to it is, hey, I find the religion. There is a God. Here's the rules. Do these rules and I'm good. Don't do these rules and I'm bad. But at least it gives me a structure to look back and be like, I'm content. Now, for some people, it works out really well, and some people, not so well. Complicated.
All right. Yeah, I think that's.
Are there? Here we can pivot topics. Are there other philosophical things you like to think about a lot? It sounds like your life right now has this very heavy emphasis on finding purpose and maximizing your time. Are there other things that are sticking in your mind or problems you're trying to think about?
Like in some way just the concept of death itself, right? And kind of grappling with what that means and what it means to be existing and experiencing. Like that is something that really is fascinating but also very confusing for me. I don't really, it's all connected in a way though, right? Like whether it's questions of how did we get here or what has decided that the laws of nature are as they are, and why do I experience what I experience? Like all of these questions are sort of all interlinked, and that's sort of a reason why philosophy as a broad subject is quite fascinating for me. Just it's all fascinating. There's no sort of aspect of it that's not. I mean, ethics is a different sort of aspect, but I also like that, like ethics and thinking about what it even means for something to be good or bad, what we're even doing by, in society and as individuals, like what we're actually trying to achieve with all that sort of moralizing and stuff. So yeah, like I would say it would be hard to find like an aspect of philosophy or something that is not something that I think about somewhat regularly in life.
No, I like that. I feel like a lot of philosophy can be boiled down to how to live and how to die, where this is the day to day, but also eventually I have to die. That inevitability at the end, and then working from there, whether it's ethics, again, it all comes back like how do I live properly, well. Also, and then the different approaches, right? You can do Bentham versus Kant. Kant is very. And I'm about to probably tick off some philosophy people out there because I took like intro to philosophy and like 2 other courses, one of which I dropped, which was, Kant has these rules like this is how you live. It's almost he has his own ideas when he builds it up. But there's almost a religious aspect of it, like you should not commit suicide. Period. Full stop. Like that's a hard, fast rule. Like you have like something like Bentham who's like maximize happiness. Well, things get really weird when the rules of Kant and how you best live your life interfere with the maximizing society's happiness versus maximizing other philosophers have different ideas, and that is really fascinating because every person can live their life in a very different way, following a very different like ethical guideline, whether it's religious, philosophical, just winging it. They could all have a very good life and sit down at the end and be like, I'm content and go. I think there's something beautiful in that. It's something very individualistic hidden in it all.
Yeah, it's all just like there's a study of ethics called meta-ethics, which, as the name implies, is about sort of the sort of meta approach to ethics and what even does it,
You.
why ethical approaches as they are and all that stuff. To be honest, mate, I
Mm-hmm.
can't really remember
Oh, it's
a
all
lot of
good.
that, but I found that kind of stuff very interesting as well, and just in the terms of like, yeah, I mean, why follow one ethical system over another? Like,
Uh-huh.
they're all sort of subjective in a sense, right?
Yes.
And yeah, I mean, and like, how do you, like, personally,
Okay.
here's a question for you. How
Yeah,
do
feel free.
you define what you should do and what is good in life and what is bad? Like, what does it look
Wow.
like to you? How
Good
would you
question.
define it?
I see the tables have turned, Freddie. I see you're in charge now. Coup
Clearly.
successful. So how do I define successful in life? Think a lot about the death
And not just
question.
that,
Yeah.
but like goodness and evil and these kind of things as well.
I think I have just like a
Or maybe it's
couple
too.
general rules that I try to follow, and I don't know if they're perfect, and they might change over time. Someone in chat earlier, I very rarely read chat, but somebody put it. I was like bolded, and I've just caught it. But I'm gonna rephrase to be a little politer, which is like, don't be a jerk. I think it's one of my rules. Of if somebody else is not harming me, and it requires no effort to make their life a little better, it's probably worth making their life a little better. I can find contentment in that, or feel content because of it. I also find that I'm wired in a way that's very empathetic, which has been always a very interesting thing I've had to wrestle with, in the sense of I really like helping people. I have a mind that's very good at exploiting people. So this has been a tough paradox. Like if I wasn't very empathetic, I would make a great supervillain. I would like to I am really, when I play games, I'm very manipulative. I'm able to figure out what's within my opponent's head, guide them down a path that leads them to my ultimate victory. And in board games, I find board games, I'm able to suspend it. So one of my friends once commented how it's a lot less fun not being on John's team because I am so manipulative and so calculating that I'm able to manipulate the game to come out to my favor. And in life, I have this other issue of I'm really empathetic. I find a lot of satisfaction of helping people. So my rules and how I have to treat it is I know here's my skill set. Skill set feels like it should be used for something more evil, but alas, I'm bound by this empathetic nature. So I'm gonna work with my empathy. This is much more core to who I am. Find my happiness there. Try not to harm many people. I forgive myself along the way for making mistakes, for I'm just human, and live my life in such a way where I die, my legacy look back and say, wow, I had a positive impact within my own definition of positivity. I didn't try to harm anyone along the way. Made some tough choices, probably messed up my morals once or twice along the way, and that's okay. We're human. And that'll be enough for me. I don't think it's going to be the money in my bank account because money, people treat it like a score in a video game, and I find it to be the silliest thing. For example, Jeff Bezos recently bought a $500 million yacht. But because of structural integrity, they couldn't put a helicopter pad on it. So they then created a mini yacht with a helicopter pad to go along with it. So Jeff Bezos has a fleet, a cruise, they're aircraft carriers. Now we have a cruise carrier just for Bezos. And I look at that, I'm like, that wouldn't make me happy. I don't even think that would make him happy.
Yeah.
So
I'd feel sad. I would just be depressed that this is the way that the world is working.
I feel yes, I think wealth inequality is something that really weighs on me heavily. Because I feel I've been very fortunate in my life, but I was much more I guess we'll just run down this path. Maybe we'll get some more insight into answering that bigger question of how I approach my own life journey and such. But I feel like a lot of my fortune. Let's not start there. Let's start here. When I was younger, I have a lot of, and in general, today say I'm a very prideful person. I'm pretty chill. I don't mind being wrong, but I definitely have a strong sense of self-worth and am willing to lean into it pretty hard. And I really wanted to be able to say early on in my life that my achievements are my own. My grades are my own. The college I go to is my own, etc. Right? Pride in what I do. But paradoxically, I also know that a lot of it comes from privilege as well. I was born into a family that could afford to, get me a tutor once a week on French. And I hate languages. I'm so bad at speaking foreign languages. It is by far my worst subject. It does not compute. Even my English is bad, which is why every career I've gone into is entirely dependent on our customer relations. But that's okay. Why not? Doesn't make any sense, but here we are. Now we're doing interviews. It's real good. Really lining up with my skills real well here. But I think this aspect of privilege also weighs on me, where in the United States, college is very expensive. I had one set of rich grandparents which took care of it. that is an unfair leg up on everybody else, which then that's the next opportunity. And we go from there and there. And so wealth inequality really weighs on me because like I've had these accomplishments. But I also know, man, did money help me a lot? And that was just born in the right place at the right time. And that is no reflection at all on who I am. I just didn't piss off my parents and grandparents. Like that's a really low bar. Therefore, I do worry, like wealth inequality weighs on me a lot because I like the idea of moving towards a world that gives everybody a good shot of success, of happiness, of being able to not have to grind away at a corporate job, where I think there's enough abundance in the world to enable people to have like the thoughts you're having, the thoughts I'm having of, well, if I were to die, how would I like live my life? But some people are forced to. I need to get a low wage job just because I can't feed myself, and that's a tougher existence. And I think that also like that's something I would like over time. But those are my thoughts on it.
Yeah.
I don't know if you have an insight.
I think one line of thought that is quite interesting to explore is people, like you mentioned pride, right? And being prideful of yourself. And we're sort of programmed to feel that and to have an ego and to want the best for ourselves and whatnot, and to really, to feel proud of ourselves, to feel like we're good at what we do and all that stuff. But in some way, like, maybe we're getting too philosophical. I don't know if that's possible, but
I told you at the start, we're going down our own path. Everyone else watching can just tag along if they want. But tell me more. Keep going.
Like essentially, I think one thing I've found is that I don't think we actually have free will in the sense that we think we do. And we don't have sort of, as you said, control over our living situation when we're born and the money and the way our parents act, like all of the things that will shape us into the person that we are, even our genes, right? And our actual biology, we have no control over that. And in some sense, I could be a cow, right? Like it doesn't really make sense, but you know what I mean?
I kind of get it though, but you just like there's a circumstantial aspect to our own existence that we did not choose. We just showed up, and we have a sense of division. They're like, this is me, but else this is me could also be a cow. Like I could have shown up and if we've had like a soul entity, because like that cow is Freddybabes. But unfortunately,
I mean, in fairness, this maybe isn't a good way to look at it, because like this question like boggles my mind. But right, in some way, just you aren't even you. You're like there is no, I don't think that even exists. Like we feel like we are the experience, right?
Yep.
But realistically, like that experience is just being generated by the entity that I am, like the body. The experience would always be there, right? Yes. Regardless, like it's never going to be, Freddy is in the body of this creature, and I am just the experience that's being generated by this brain and this body. The cow experience is being generated by the cow body and brain. I don't know. Other people probably have maybe a view that it's like coming in externally, right? Like or there's more like a freedom or a soul or something, right? Coming up and like
yes.
You know what I'm
trying to say. I'm with you. So let me run with it, because there's an interesting I think Freud's idea of like the id, the ego, and superego comes in here, where like the id's your wants, like I need this, I need this, and I need this. The ego's this, and this is my understanding. The ego is this sensory, like we want this and need this. Let me plot how to get it. But the superego, which we've been touching on a lot, which is this morality of it, where it's kind of interesting, because if I look at the ego, there's a subdivision of like, this is a Freddy, this is a John. But your super ego, things get really weird, because where do you start dividing things? Like if I keep myself divided, that's fine. But if I start breaking it down, we start becoming molecules. And like the ego's job is to keep the body alive. That's effectively a sensor, but it's very involuntary. But then things start to get really broken down. Like, okay, the cow is producing the experience, but other things are producing experience on the cow, but it's really all like one and the same. And it starts to get trippy when you start going in, either going in very deep or zooming out. Zooming out, you start to see like the meaningless, like, wow, the universe is huge, like I'm that thing. Or if I zoom in, it's all of a sudden like, wow, I can't really break down this atom from that atom. Like you have oxygen, like an oxygen atom, that has an oxygen atom. Like where do I divide? There's almost like a sense of, if we keep it like our minds just like ego and the wants and needs, like, okay, we have these divisions, but then things get weird if I go either way, go too in or too far out.
Yeah, for sure. And also, even if you do thought experiments of like, well, how does cloning influence this kind of a
Uh-huh.
concept, or you know what I mean? Like,
Uh-huh.
it just gets really weird because, like, if you had an exact copy of me,
Yes.
they would be having the exact experience that I'm having. We would be surely,
Uh-huh.
right?
Yeah.
But
So
then there's no difference in the person that we are. Like, you know what I mean? It's just
I got a
really
crazy.
bizarre stuff to think about.
Let
And
me go down 2 minutes on a crazy journey. Have you ever heard of existential comics?
of
Existential comics.
comics,
No, existential comics is the name of a comic. Like
I haven't.
existential. Okay, so
Mhm.
person who writes it, I think, is like an actual communist. But the person's out there in certain aspects. But the very first comic they wrote was fascinating. So they invent teleportation, and everyone loves it. It's teleporting, the teleportation gate. You know, airplanes are gone. Who cares? You just pop in. You know, want to go hang out in Brazil for the day? Great. You just walk over to the teleportation gate. You're in Brazil. One dude's protesting it. He's saying, look, it's not you. What's happening is you're going in the gate, they're breaking down your atoms, and they're making copies of the atoms, re-putting it back together over there. They're not the same atoms. You are dying when you walk in the gate, and you're going to be reborn. Like, a copy of you is now in Brazil, but it's not you. You died. They just broke down all your atoms, and just put new ones together that mimic it exactly over there. And so guy is getting really depressed. So it's basically he's watching humanity die on an unprecedented scale because everyone's using teleportation gate. I would use a teleportation gate. And he finds the creator of it. The creator says, look, you know how you sleep and wake up? While you're sleeping, you have no memory of it. Your atoms are being reorganized. Your brain is undergoing dreams and all this stuff, and you are going to wake up slightly different. In a sense, if your argument holds true, then you are dying every night, and it just trips the guy out. And I feel like that kind of holds true of the cloning, where it's like, is it you or is it not you? It's the same thing, but simultaneously, our life, our experience is very rigid. It gets really weird when you start breaking it down, trying to say, like, is my own like continuity even there? Which might also be getting a little bit deep.
Yeah.
If I sleep and I wake up
Yeah,
and I
yeah.
have a different emotional feel, like, was I the same person anymore?
Right, right. And I almost I feel like the conclusion you get towards is no, we're not the same thing. We just have this feeling in our mind that there is a continuity when there maybe actually isn't even a continuity, right? And
Yes.
like me right now, I'm completely a different thing than I was like 10 years ago, but I feel like I'm the same thing. But realistically, that thing has actually, quote unquote, died
100%.
at some point, right?
So I feel like you have kind of like two conclusions, and maybe both are right. And I agree with you. First is this: hey, me from 10 years ago is dead. Like, I'm a different person. I'm just different. Period. Whether it's sleep, how much can you change? At this point, it's just gone, and it wasn't a bad thing. So first thing I would challenge is like that relationship with death. You're already gone. Like, the past is the past. And the other thing is, does that matter at all? Where you mentioned the experience of being a cow, the experience of being Freddy. That experience, in a sense, it exists for such a brief moment, and it goes on to the next moment, and there's another brief like snapshot. Is that really like a tragedy, or is it just like living? Is that just part of it all, the day to day that you shouldn't necessarily have a negative or positive emotion for? It just simply is. Like, that's okay.
Yeah, I mean, in some way, it maybe is a relief, right? I think essentially it's what you're saying, right? We, as an actual entity,
Yes.
like I exist only like as for a second, right? Or like a millisecond, or like not even like for the shortest period of time that you could imagine, right?
Tiniest snapshot.
And then right, and then you're actually a new thing, but you're sort of kept together by this by your brain,
your
right? Which is
ego.
and the and in some way that means we're just already dead in a sense, right? We're already dead. We're already continually dying. Like, I don't know if that makes sense,
I'm
but
with you.
like our life is essentially just like a very brief instance, right? But it's like we're living. I don't know. This is getting a bit off the rails, but we're living like
I don't care. We can go off
our
the rails.
life.
It's all fine with me.
Yeah. But the point is, I guess, what is even the point of this distinction if we feel like it's continuity, then isn't that the same thing as continuity in a way? Like,
Yeah, I mean, it is.
you know.
It's. I feel like the actual formal answer of how specific as you get, I think the idea of the snapshots is most correct. Where you're creating the past. The past is immutable. Like, you exist for the briefest of possible moment. And that next moment, you're always slightly different. And Adam here, something is going to change. But it is definitely, there's a continuity to it all, but we construct that continuity. And we give meaning to that continuity. We feel that that must persist. But it also ends up, because of our obsession of that continuity, manifesting an odd relationship with death, where many people spend their whole lives trying not to die. I do wonder if there's too much of an emphasis on it, where I see how some people age, and I'm like, wow, I don't know if I'd really want that. And it gets weird. And this pursuit of continuity and self. But at the same time, it's that biological aspect of trying to reproduce, trying to keep things moving. That also helps us have a species to this day.
Indeed. I think there's a line of thought to go down there, and we could talk about like euthanasia and and stuff like that, because that's also quite interesting. I want to stay on this topic like very briefly, because I'm like, what happens with the cloning? What happens if I don't know, say you could go like okay, maybe it's just simple, right? And we're just
go for it. No, I will have this conversation for hours, so keep going. As long as you want to be chatting about this, we'll go.
I guess my question is, I'm not even sure I know what my question is. Like, what is, so like, first off, there's a ton of power in the mind, or like there is some power that allows us to experience continuity, right?
Yes, there is a sense of continuity.
And that's kind of like, how can a sense of continuity be created? That's a question. That's quite interesting. And also, if you essentially, we're saying that the continuity and the feeling of continuity is existence and is living, and that's kind of the only thing that actually is like living, right? You know what I mean? Like, otherwise you're just living in an instant and then you're dead anyway. Like, if that feeling of continuity didn't exist, you would essentially not even be living, right? You would just be
like a machine almost. If at the same time it could also be machines if you get really like mathematical.
Like an insect that's just going, it's almost not even living if it doesn't experience itself and its continuity. It's just sort of a biological machine, right?
Yes, like a biological robot.
So my question is, if you could create the feeling of continuity within something, if there was a way to manufacture that, then you could essentially, I don't know, like it's open-ended. Like, what does that mean? You know what I mean? Like,
I feel like once you have that sense of continuity, humanity has that. You start to develop. That's where the ethics come into play. That comes with purpose, because you have a acknowledgement of the moment and the future, and things get weird because you start to realize for the first time ever you have to contemplate and have conscious choices to direct yourself in those ways. Now, even if I were to take the position that we're dying every single moment. In each of those moments, I still have the option to direct my sense of self to something, right? So even if I say, okay, everything's one the same, we're all this giant universal machine, like, that's great, I still need to be making decisions. Now, the weird part about decision making and this continuity is it's also involuntary, because let's say, for example, let's make a really easy example. Let's say this interview. I decided to pick you for the interview, and you decided to accept. And then we reached out and let each other, I reached out to you, and you said, yeah, of course, it'd be great, let's do this. You had to decide about coming on the interview. I had to decide that I should decide on whether I want to invite you to do this interview. But what made the decision on making the decision? That's where things get weird. Because there's an involuntary nature to our own existence, even though we have a continuity and a sense of free will. But we do still have to cope with that aspect of it, where it might not even be free will, because there's the involuntary nature of what's pushing us to make a decision about something. But then, that's where I think the ethics comes in. We have these trying to make the best decisions we can, but of course it's all motivated by involuntary mechanical aspect to ourselves, which things get weird. I think the simplest definition would be like biological, saying our sense of selves helps our survivability. We're kind of still like a machine. We just don't know it, but we get this bonus feature of consciousness to try to navigate it.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think that's it, right? Basically, we are all just sort of biological machines, and we're just trying. Yeah, we have a system in place that emphasizes and tries to sort of ascend beyond what we are, and yeah, as a result, in some way, we're looking for meaning and we're looking for purpose and all these other things in a and reality, we're not actually, like, there's nothing really to achieve there, right? We're just sort of appeasing our own processes.
Yes.
And even that, those feelings of wanting to appease the processes and the ways that we would do that, those are also part of the same biological machine, right? And it's just all inescapable in a sense. Like, we can't actually separate ourselves from that. Like, it's just all already destined, and you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, there's a wire.
It's always we're just like computers running a script, right? And we feel like the script is more important, or like we have control over it, but it's just no.
Still, there's a mechanical aspect that binds us as being part of existence. While we try to have this, like, our free will is almost in and of itself a extra sensor, like a temperature monitor on probe going to Mars, where like it'll be there, it'll check things. Just this is like a super sensor. Like, it can make actual decisions based on inputs of data, but there's still that involuntary aspect, that mechanical, biological aspect that is triggering this sensor to exist, where things get crazy.
Yeah, I mean, once you go down this route, you can also start to say, like, maybe it's very possible to make like artificial intelligence, right? And at that point, the artificial intelligence isn't any different to human intelligence, and maybe you could even create animals or other creatures that are essentially the same as humans. Like, we kind of leave behind the idea that humans are more important or more, right? We're just all like biological machines at the end of the day, and
yeah, and I think that becomes an interesting question. What point do computers become smart enough to not be able to be recognized as different from humanity? There's a really interesting thing going on in the world of media right now, where artificial intelligence is able to write basic news stories, which gets creepy. Where these aren't like beautiful written stories, but they're engaging enough to attract attention, and they can write thousands of them per year. They are not a human writer, particularly popular in finance, because they say, oh, these stocks moved these are, moved up and down like this. Let me alert people to that, write a quick story about what's going on when, things happen, spits out a story. Incredible? No. Engaging? Yes. And then what happens if you start increasing the power of that? We also see that with like Go, right? I think it's Deep Blue. Are you familiar with this? You are perfect. So then quick summary. Deep Blue, they made a multi-level thinking algorithm to play Go, which is not a game you can brute force calculate. There's too many moves. There are more moves in that game than atoms in existence, if I recall. Because Go is played on a 19 by 19 board, and you can go anywhere at any time. So you have a lot of ways to play the game. But they're beating real people because they're making flexible thinking for the game. It'll be interesting with androids, and as we move towards a blurrier future with what free will means, what's programmed, how it all manifests. Also, the philosophies that come from that, because that's where things start to get murky. Because humanity is no longer going to be just like, we're great, but if artificial computers are doing our job better, what happens then?
Yeah, and even just the idea of you get into this like ethically questionable territory of, well, genetic modification, and I mean, if everything is sort of we're all just blank slates, or not blank slates, we're all just biological creatures, like biological machines, right? We could just we could just design better biological machines. We could just make them so they don't suffer, and we could build them so that they don't hurt other people, and all this stuff, right? And then what's the difference? They're going to feel as we would feel, and surely that's the way that you would want to sort of continue the species, would be to just create sort of a perfect version of humans, but in some way then maybe you're losing something. But is that even the something that you lose, like the individuality or the whatever, right? Is that thing even real? Like, is that just our sort of own, again, processes and whatnot? Like, is that just saying, oh, that's individual, keep that, when in reality it's not important, not relevant, doesn't mean anything?
Yeah, I think it's messy. People have never, in my opinion, been good at determining what are like positive traits to have, what are not. So the idea of trying to design a perfect human seems very difficult. Where certain situations you want some people that are more peaceful, sometimes you want someone who's more violent, someone confrontational. Where I don't even know what a perfect human would look like because the situations are always so different. But we are going to start to have to address those questions. As you mentioned, we're getting better and better at handling our genes, and CRISPR is just wild as technology. Really start snipping it down. Like, oh god, that's wild. We're just gonna have to deal with that in our lifetime. And the fact that there's like Dolly the lamb was the first cloned animal, and it's just like, and that was even decades ago. That is not new. That's not new tech. It is a wild. We're gonna have some deep philosophical questions, and I wonder if that's where the world's just something gonna go, as not even artificial intelligence, but like machines improve and what they're able to do. Things like Boston Dynamics, RoboDog comes to mind. What computers are able to do with additional computing power and smarter approaches to programming itself. Will humanity start to be pushed towards more creative jobs? Jobs that require stranger, more philosophical levels of thinking, where robots will struggle more. So instead of being in the fields of, designing machines, turns out machines might be better eventually at designing themselves. You just need someone to click a switch, say, all right, here's what I'm looking for. Spits out the perfect machine. Maybe it'll be more, I wonder if the future will be more focused on reading and writing and philosophy and trying to make sense of it all. I wonder if there'll be like a religious resurgence as you start to notice that your neighbor's RoboDog is able to mow the lawn better than you. Will you start to question your own existence and be like, I got replaced by a RoboDog? That's it's big questions.
And maybe and not just in the sense of jobs, right? But you might find that, I don't know, maybe your partner cheats on you with a robot because the robot is just nicer and better in every way, right? And you're like, well, shit. What?
Never thought
like,
about that.
What am I even doing here, right? Like, there's just so many angles to it. Like, essentially, you would feel a bit redundant in every aspect at a certain point because, again, we're just a biological machine, but we're sort of a flawed and very individual sort of version of that.
Yes.
And unless you can cope and emphasize and highlight the importance of that individuality and the flaws within it, then yeah, and maybe you do that with writing and poetry and these other things, right? And
can you imagine
eccentricity?
I wonder, getting cheated on with a machine would be the weirdest thing. Because also I think in that saying that you think of all the assumptions that had to go into saying that, because you'd have to acknowledge that this isn't just like a toy. This is now a thing that exists and it deserves the same respect as someone cheating on me. It's not like, oh, they have a toy and I'm like, oh no, this is the real deal, guys. This person's abandoning humanity for an android because this android is perfect in every single way, or can comfort them, or a human in a way another human probably can't do. Oh, that's so weird to think about, but that's a fun thought.
I mean, potentially the future could be humans do not mate with other humans, right? They are in relationships with androids because the androids have been designed such that they don't really mind being in a relationship with the human, but the humans want whatever their idea of like the best partner is, right? And the androids sort of are enabling that and don't necessarily have to lose out on any of the human aspects if it gets far enough advanced. And then potentially like the human species just sort of becomes extinct. I don't know, like it's quite interesting. I think there's just so much room for like dystopian vibes, right?
Yeah, no,
in the
it's
future,
some serious ones. And it'll be interesting to see how humanity advances it all in the future, because we also are already facing really bizarre questions today when it comes to I feel like science and cybersecurity, and these, like, we're already facing like the very basic stuff right now, and then when we start ramping it up in the future, it'll be a whole nother level. I think drones is another good example of something that might have some interesting thoughts, just on a basic level of like, okay, if you send a robot in the war, like, what does that mean? Like, mathematically might make sense, but like morally, ethically, like it's kind of weird. But also it kind of also like saves lives, but also takes lives. Like, what could go wrong? What's going right? It's super interesting, and we're starting to just start this sample those questions today, but they will be, I think, more and more and more present as we accelerate to crazy future. You can already see it in the advertising on websites how targeted it is.
Yeah, I'm always spooked by that. And you're like, you have a conversation with someone, and then suddenly the thing you talked about pops up on like YouTube or something, and you're like, what's going on there? But yeah, just to sort of finish that topic, I guess. Like there's one thing, I can't remember quite what I was gonna say, but oh yeah, like I think the scarier thing is, or the scariest thing is, I don't think there's like we don't really have like a committee of people who like discuss the philosophical problems and like, what does all of this mean, right?
Yeah,
And
we're
as
winging
such,
it.
the future kind of just does its own thing. Like the future just comes, and we don't really have a say in how it looks, right? It just is going to happen, and we don't have people like. I mean, maybe that happens at some point, but you can just have AI going crazy and
yeah,
I
I
don't know,
think
like
it's interesting. I feel like you need. So you're right. There isn't this council of philosophers sitting there trying to do their best to write the rules. You do see some people like Isaac Asimov, the author, the sci-fi author, writing out like the laws of robotics, trying to get some general ideas. So there were already worries back in the 1960s, I think, is when he was writing, maybe 1970s. But you're right. There isn't like a council. We're just kind of winging it. Everyone's gonna have their own opinion, and there are consequences if things go wrong. But we're just gonna find out. I hope we make good decisions about it. We all get to contribute our little bit. I do think that influencers that are popular on the subject will start to appear, right? I think of like Neil deGrasse Tyson as somebody who pushes science knowledge really well and gets people interested in astronomy. And so I think you have a number of people who are really good at spreading news and ideas on ideologies around politics. I imagine people speaking about AIs will start to appear, give it 20 years, and help start to shape that.
I think in some way, like problems tend to be solved after they've already happened and appeared in the world, right? And people see it and go, "Oh, that's a problem. We should probably fix it." And like my concern is like I feel like there's just going to be some kind of a crisis where like people didn't really like plan and preventative measures for a certain thing that's going to be kind of devastating that we didn't really foresee happening. And yeah, you're going to want to change those and put the laws and rules in place after the fact, but maybe then it's already a bit too late and you've just allowed whatever whatever future to happen. Hopefully it won't be like that, but
hopefully it won't be too bad. We're gonna find out though, right? We got a long way to go.
Yeah,
the beginning.
Exactly.
All right, so why don't we, do you have any other aspects of the topic you want to hit?
Nah, I think that I'm good.
Excellent. It's so funny. So I have like a bullet point sheet of everything I want to talk about, notes here. Philosophy was just one bullet point at the very end we added while we were talking and just before the interview. And that has been quite the subject. So I wanted to ask you, the topic I thought we were going to talk a lot more about was the competitive mindset of you've done high level competition for the vast majority of your life, or at least a good chunk of your later years. And so I wanted to talk to you about that and how you got into that originally. What was the first time you remember starting to compete in a high pressure or high level situation?
I don't know, like I wouldn't say, like I was always grinding ranks in League of Legends and stuff, right? And that was quite satisfying. But I don't know if I count it as quite the same as like playing tournaments and that sort of mindset. But I've always felt really competitive, and it feels good to like, yeah, I'm better than that other guy, and I and this kind of a feeling. And in some way, like I think esports is actually it's closer to sports than people realize.
Yes.
Like, and I was thinking in some ways the different genres of games are basically, they're just sports essentially, just
Mhm.
online, right? On a computer. Like if you play a MOBA, it's like playing football or something, right? Or soccer.
Mhm.
And if you play a shooter, it's a different kind of sport. It's like
Yes.
basketball or something, right? And in that way you can be good at certain sports, you can be weaker at certain sports, you can practice a lot of one sport,
Mhm.
get really, really good. Maybe a sport just sort of you're naturally talented in it or whatever, right?
Yes.
Um, and in that way, I think the competitive aspect of it is similar to with sports. Like
Mhm.
I can go to my football club or whatever and just be practicing a lot, getting better. Feel like I'm, playing some county tournaments, whatever. Like
Mhm.
maybe that sort of experience is similar to ranking up in League of Legends, and I'm hitting the Diamond League or
Uh-huh.
whatever, and feeling like I'm improving and such. And then you get to the big leagues and you're,
Mhm.
playing in a tournament and whatnot. I think it's quite similar.
Yeah, I would agree with that in my experience. Like sports, I think one of the issues is they're supposed to be physical, but really, sports fundamentally, in my opinion, is just coming down to good competition. People seeking to perform at a high level, giving it their all, and seeing who really comes out. Gets that moment of like, yeah, I'm better than you, as you so aptly
Hmm.
put. Tell me a little bit about that difference between what it takes to grind a ladder game. Like League of Legends, you're grinding ranks. Gwent, you're grinding up. For you, in your case, going to pro rank and then grinding up the ladder there, trying to qualify for different opens. How does that mentality differ than the mentality you find yourself taking in a tournament situation?
Yeah, it's like it's a lot more like a job, I guess. The
Mm-hmm.
grinding, right? That's sort of the putting the hours in, the trying to get better,
Mm-hmm.
and the tournament is more the actual sort of competition and the actual make or break time where you have to sort of perform at your best. I
Mm-hmm.
guess that's the main difference for me. I think for some other people, the ladder is quite similar to the tournament for them in many
Mm-hmm.
ways. They're probably just trying to always perform at their best, and the ladder they're really focusing in and trying to. But that's not quite how I approach it, and I'm like more casual, but more sort of trying to learn and trying to improve on the ladder, and then in the tournament, this has to be at my best.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the performance that I can give, and yeah.
Nice. So recently you got second place at Gwent Masters, which is awesome. Tell me a bit about, do you go into that tournament when you're getting in that tournament mindset? And this is at this point in your life, you've done plenty of tournaments. You're one of the most accomplished Gwent players in terms of just number of tournaments and placing in them. Did you go in with the mindset of I'm gonna give it my best? Is it a mindset of I know I'm gonna crush every person I meet? Like what is your mindset when you sat down and going into Gwent Masters uh this time
It
around?
it's really interesting. It like changes
Mm-hmm.
week by week, day by day, right? One day I might be feeling like the common theme is I really want to win. I really, really want to
Mm-hmm.
win. I kind of have to win. If I don't win, I'm going to feel very like I've essentially failed in what I wanted to do. So I
Okay.
would really like to win, and I'll try as hard as I can to do that. And sort of the day-to-day thing can be, I don't feel like I'm gonna win. This is terrible. This is horrible. I'm very stressed out.
Mm-hmm.
Or it could be, I'm feeling super confident today actually, and everything is it's all on track, and I feel like I'm gonna win and no problem. And yeah, but the constant sort of goal and mentality is the same, but day to
Mm-hmm.
day it's sort of shifting, and the stresses and anxieties come and whatnot.
Yeah, that makes sense that the emotions can be all over the place, whether you're grinding on ladder, just prepping for the tournament, or in the tournament itself. But as you mentioned, when you get to a tournament, you want to win, you want to be at the peak performance, so you don't let yourself down. What are some of the strategies you employ to try to make sure when you hit that tournament day, you're feeling good, that you're ready to win?
In terms of like just outside of the game,
Well, either way.
I
So, for
guess is what you're asking.
example, if I wanted, let me do a really generic, basic example. If I knew tomorrow's gonna have a big exam, I might go to bed a little bit early after studying, try to make sure I'm like refreshed. But at your level, when you're at high level, I think there is an aspect of emotions you described that play a big part as well. You want to have
Hmm.
everything be perfect, especially when there's money on the line in personal pride. You don't want to go home after getting 3-0'd in round one and walk away thinking, what just happened? Do you have any tricks that you try to set your emotional state to be as good as possible on the day of the tournaments?
Yeah, I wouldn't say I have tricks, more just like it's all about it's like a mental game, right? Of psyching
Mhm.
yourself up and like it sounds kind of weird, but I was talking myself through like, okay, this is the situation, like, and even talking about the philosophy a bit, like
Uh-huh.
I was thinking thoughts like it doesn't really matter if I lose, I'm just gonna perform as well as my brain can allow me to perform. I might even make misplays. Like I
Mhm.
can't tell how my brain is gonna do on the day. I can only just make sure I'm focused on this goal and that's what my whole being is trying to achieve. And
Mhm.
then we'll see how it plays out, right? So it's sort of just psyching yourself up, like really trying to chill and calm the mind, but and like enter a mentality of like the emotions can't be the thing deciding what I do. I have to do things based on just what the practice has said and
Mhm.
what the goal dictates I have to do. So
Interesting.
yeah.
It sounds like there's a degree of focusing your mind on the objective, letting every thought, like emotions don't matter, and you just be executing to achieve the goal, while simultaneously using your philosophy of life and how ambiguous it can be, saying, "Oh yeah, pressure's off, pressure's off there. Focus on the goal, get the pressure there." But the loss and all of that, you're gonna shove to the side. As you mentioned earlier, if you lose, it's gonna feel bad, but in the moment, you're like, "Yeah, it doesn't matter. Like it's life. It's gonna be fine." But I really want to win. That's an interesting
hmm
paradox, but it
hmm
sounds like you've balanced it really well. Do you have this kind of mentality the first time you tried to compete in the tournament setting, or is this something that developed over time?
I don't know. Like in the earlier tournaments, I had like a confidence, and maybe it was even an arrogance of
Mm-hmm.
like just feeling like some of the tournaments, like for example the challenger that I won in the early days.
Mm-hmm.
It just the whole experience was very dreamlike and very bizarre for me. Like um I didn't feel like I was pressured. I didn't feel stressed out about it. I was just there.
Mm-hmm.
I was just playing the game. I was almost like felt like a bit of a like I was also very ill at the time. I don't know if you're aware of this, but
No,
like
it
there was a
wasn't.
big stomach bug, like a
Mm.
sickness going around at that tournament. So I was
Wow.
feeling really like I literally threw up,
Ooh.
like
Okay.
physically sick,
Uh-huh.
like a minute before playing the game. Like I was walking to the game
Okay.
and I just threw up in the toilet like before going there. So I was like completely, I was in some like weird mental state. I don't know what was going on. So that was a bit of an outlier maybe, but
Mm-hmm.
um, it just kind of felt like it was all fitting into place and I just didn't really have any doubt that I was winning the tournament. I don't know. It sounds kind of weird, but
That I like
like
that.
sort of yeah, it just felt like it was all working and there was no worries. And in other tournaments, it's been different, but quite often I'm seeing, I see what decks people have, I see how they're playing or their lineup or whatever, and you can kind of gauge whether or not you're winning the tournament anyway, right?
Uh-huh.
So the most stressful thing tends to be early on in the tournament. You don't really know what people will bring, what they're going to play. Once you
Mm-hmm.
see everything, it becomes clear, and you're like, okay, I'm winning or I'm losing or have a chance or whatever.
Wow.
Um, and yeah,
That's
quite a lot of tournaments are
wild.
like that for me, where it's like, ah, the tournament's over. I can win it. I've probably won the tournament. I just have to not fuck up, or
Uh-huh.
equally, this is looking pretty bad. I'm gonna lose the final. It's okay, whatever kind of thinking.
That's interesting. I know Life Coach got a really good matchup at the recent Gwent Masters with a lot of Swarm Punish and got into a bunch of Swarm decks. That's
hmm
so interesting. I never thought about that. Where you sit down, you see everyone's decks, you're like, oh yeah, my deck designs are perfect. I'm gonna clobber these guys. Or other times you look at like, yeah, this one's not gonna be so hot. I'm just dead on the
Yeah.
water before I even sat at the table. That's so interesting. You think that takes away from some of the competition? Like in League of Legends, right? There's a whole drafting phase between the match, and then in the esports aspect of it, they go into the Rift, and then there's so much control over the characters. They have a lot of you can win and lose in draft, but you have some chances later up to make up for it. But it sounds like in
hmm
Gwent, a lot of it's like look at each other's decks, say, "Wow, their deck is gonna smoke mine." If I'll play perfectly, but if they play perfectly, I'm dead in the water. Do you think that takes away from the competition, or do you think that's just part of the fun of competing in Gwent?
It's interesting. I think it's just a different kind of competition, right?
Uh huh.
Like it's as if in League of Legends, the sort of understanding of the draft and
Mhm.
all the preparation leading up to that is the main sort of competition.
Uh huh.
And I think in Gwent, that's essentially what it is. Other players will not see it that way, and I think that's where I differ from some people, is they see the tournament itself and how you perform in the tournament as the main thing and the execution. But I just don't personally, in a best of 5 in a card game, I don't think that like I've talked about this a lot with certain people, but I don't think the actual plays you make that much of a difference. You can throw a game that's very impactful, and that will lose you the thing. But equally, there are games where you don't have to win it, and you're still winning the series most likely. So in that game, if you make a ton of misplays, really no one cares. It doesn't matter at all. And and that's sort of like, a lot of people watch a tournament, right, and they'll see a lot of mistakes maybe and be like, wow, that was terrible. But in reality, none of those mistakes had any impact on the actual winning of the series. It's just basically there are certain like win conditions for each lineup in the tournament. So you have to win with a certain deck against a certain matchup, because that is where you have like your best chance for it to win, for example. And if you're not able to fulfill those win conditions, then your chances of winning are really low. And if you are, then they're really high. So it's that's how I would look at it. Yeah, it's just a different thing.
Do you think it's very different, like a distinction between esports and sports, where a lot of esports you have that this because it's more, a lot of them are more strategy based. League of Legends has the draft phase, and with Dota 2, I think even I'm not like StarCraft's all about knowing every strategy and reacting to it. Do you think there's a lot of prep work in esports that doesn't necessarily care about sports, where sports are much more traditional sports are much more decided on the field? Or do you think sports has that too?
I do think card games in particular, like these, because they have a lot of randomness to them, right? So it's not like StarCraft. You can't just, like, the way you gain an edge is not necessarily going to be just, I'll just play better, because even if you played just better, then what, you're beating them 55% of the time? Like, that's not enough to actually be consistently winning tournaments, right? So there has to be another approach, and the way to do that in card games, I think, is just maximizing the decks, and the randomness there then comes in what will the opponents play, because you don't truly know how their brains will work and what they're going to do. So I would say it's just card games in particular. I think
well, that's Freddy again. He went infinite. All right, we give him a moment. Things just get glitched. You'll see a couple of me. Give it a moment.
Discord always shuts down like this after some time.
It's all good. All good. Talking about StarCraft, where you can win 55% of the time if you play well, but there's more aspects to it. You wanna?
Yeah. I mean, card games is just very weird, and I feel like in some way that's why I've been successful in card games, more so than I don't think I could compete in like League of Legends or Counter-Strike, because I'm not mechanically, I don't have the talent, I don't have the skill. I'm not like a professional soccer player, right? I'm not like insanely talented with the ball and stuff. Like, it's more just about the preparation and understanding of all the interworkings of it that is what.
So when you got to the recent Gwent Masters tournament, when you saw everybody's deck, how did you feel? Sounds like that's a moment where you really know what's ahead.
I actually felt like it was an interesting mix of like sadness and happiness, right? Or like elation and disappointment, because I felt like, I don't know, essentially I felt like people were not doing what they should do in the tournament, if that makes sense. They were doing sort of they were playing decks that were not, like, essentially I felt like I was one step too far of what my predictions had been, and I thought people would have sort of worked stuff out and be on a similar sort of, step in the meta, in a sense. But at the same time, so I was disappointed that they had not sort of been a bit more like putting emphasis on the deck building and the figuring out other people's lineups, because I think quite a lot of people in these tournaments are they're like, let me figure out what the best decks are, and then I will play the best decks and I will try to win in the game, and they have this different mindset to it. So yeah, there was a bit of disappointment there, but also happiness, because I still felt like the fact that they were doing that approach meant that I'm not getting wrecked myself, right? Because they haven't tried to predict me, they haven't tried to beat me in any way, they're just playing good decks. So in that case, I should be fine and should be able to win as well. So
interesting.
Yeah.
So it sounds like you were basically playing on the meta after the meta. So they are basically everyone's going to bring these decks. These are the best decks. But I know they're going to want to beat these decks. So they're going to bring these set of decks. And then I'm going to prepare my deck list to beat that set of decks. And then nobody made the jump. So everyone's just playing the standard best deck. So nobody's been targeting you, trying to play the meta on the meta. But the downside is everyone's just playing normal decks. So you're positioned for a series of decks that nobody brought.
Right. Interestingly, in fairness, 2 players did bring the sort of stage of the meta that I was anticipating.
Which one?
Which was Tailbot and Magpie. They both brought variations on the sort of next step of the meta. And I can break it down if you want. Like,
go for
it. Tailbot Magpie had that sort of, they were trying to beat the stuff that was actually good. Life Coach and Game King, I don't really know what they were doing. They were trying to beat a phase of the meta that was not there anymore, essentially. They were a bit late to the party. I mean, it worked out for Life Coach, but their lineup was just not, I don't think it was that with it. And then the other players were all Team Artusa, and they were bringing the good decks, which were being beaten by Magpie and Tailbot in theory. And then my decks were essentially good into half of the field of that. So it would have been good into Magpie, like very good, but not good against Tailbot. So I made a decision to, if people are countering the good decks, then I will counter half of the counters. And I will also be okay into the good decks in the first place, if you see what I mean.
A little bit ahead.
And there has to be a trade-off there. Yeah, I could have. It would be very difficult to beat both Tailbot and Magpie because those lineups are so different. So you kind of have to make a trade-off, and in the end, it was a. But there was also another. I could have also just been like Magpie or Tailbot and just countered the original deck, right? And if I'd done that, I probably would have been in a better spot. So that's why I was disappointed. Because I expected more people to bring the counter to the good stuff rather than just the good stuff itself.
Right, so you hedged a little bit, but what you were really positioning for never transpired. But I think luckily, it looks like Tailbot got eliminated round 1 by Life Coach's very different lineup, and which is probably, it has to feel pretty good. Also shows the nature of the randomness of this. Not only are you playing this like 16-dimension mental game, trying to predict what they're doing and then predicting what, and they're trying to, they should be trying to predict what you're doing, but of course you're predicting that they're predicting you, but that never happened. I think it was crazy. And all of a sudden you get the deck list. Like, some people went random, some people went best deck, some people tried to counter the best deck, the next level of the meta. And then you sit there and go, and you have to play this out. That's so crazy. I can see how you, and in many aspects of this esport, where you have to, it's very mental, even before you hit the keyboard. And then you hit the keyboard, it's like, just look, as long as I'm totally like throw away, like heat wave my own unit, it's gonna be, the matches are most excited. Did you think you'd play second? Did you look at those decks and were like, I'm gonna get second in this tournament? Or how did you feel when you see the bracket, you see the decks, you're like, I'm gonna get blank? Or do you think you'd win it all?
I felt if I beat Demorcus, I would win the tournament. That's what I felt, because I felt like Demorcus just had the best chance against the lineup, and in theory, my lineup should beat everything that they, like, all of the. I also thought that probably Magpie was going to beat Colomoan, and then Magpie was probably going to beat Life Coach because his lineup looked like it should. But apparently, I didn't watch the games, but apparently Magpie messed it up or something. I don't know. That he should have been favored, I think, with the idea behind his lineup. It was just countering Colomoan's lineup essentially, so he should have been fine. But and I was thinking, if Magpie gets to the final, then I completely wreck him. Like, there's no chance for him, because that's exactly what I wanted them to play, was his lineup. And the other 2 players on the way should also be very beatable. So didn't work out like that. And in reality, one of my decks was just really crappy. Like, I didn't test it enough before.
Which one was it?
Before bringing it, so I was a bit gutted about that. And that was sort of the, if that deck had been a bit different, and I was close to maybe bringing something a bit different as well, then it would have been very easy, I think.
Which deck was it? Was it the Northern Realms one by chance? If I'm taking a shot in the dark, it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, I looked at that. I was like, there was some like. So I'm not. I qualify pro rank, but I'm definitely not aiming the top of the standings. I looked at that. I'm like, there's some craziness happening here, and some of it I think is just absolute like genius. But how far is it? I'm like, wow, this deck is wild. But it was man, got second in the tournament. That's awesome. Do you think well, first, actually, before I even go for it, how do you feel about that? we talked earlier about that mentality. Get to the end, you've been focused the whole time. You're telling yourself, life is meaningless. It's complicated. Like, not much pressure on me, but I must win this tournament. You're dealing with the paradox. You're focused. Get to the end, and then what? What do you feel?
Like bad feelings.
Really?
More so
Okay,
than
tell
good
me more.
ones. Yeah.
So how do you?
Because
Mhm.
it's all about winning for me. It's not about how
Uh-huh.
much you take home in terms of prize money,
Makes
or
sense.
it's just about winning. And if you lose, you lost. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's how it is for me. Like I felt very much like way more happier after the first day when I
Mm-hmm.
won my match than I felt
Nice.
the second day after I lost a match. Like it wasn't
Wow.
even comparable. Like first day I'm on top of the world, like
Mm-hmm.
feeling so happy and
Mm-hmm.
just excellent, and the second day I'm like, well, that's unfortunate.
Interesting.
I didn't quite get what I wanted, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
um,
I think.
it shouldn't be creating bad feelings, but
Well, I think it's that. Well, I don't really think it shouldn't or should is the right word. It's just how you interpret it. It's up to you. And I feel like we acknowledge there's that like ruthless winner's mindset of classic saying by from Talladega Nights, it's Ricky Bobby saying, if you're not first, you're last. Where if you're going in to win it all and you get second, great, you did better than everybody else. Still didn't win. You wanted that extra step.
yeah.
And yeah, and then you have to kind of like deal with that. How do you deal with that? Because you have this flood of negative emotions, and it's super weird because everyone's like, "Wow, Freddy, you did so well. You got second. You look at all the money you made. You did better in Tailbot. You did better on Magpie. You did better on Life Coach. You did better on all these great people. How do you feel?" And you have to be like, "Yeah, I feel like crap." How do you first deal with that flood, and also like flood on like the everybody else looking at you and saying, "Wow, you did so good," and you're feeling bad. How do you also get through those kind of negative emotions?
Uh, I mean, like, it doesn't really bother me that people are like saying congrats and stuff, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Yeah.
like it is objectively not a bad thing that's happened to me, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
um, yeah, I mean, and from
Yeah.
everyone's perspective, it seems really great that second place is a thing. So it doesn't bother
Mm-hmm.
me that people do that, and it's nice that they're, still congratulatory, and whatnot. I guess like how I deal with it, I don't know, man. Like dealing with this kind of feeling, there's two things you can do, right? You can either say, okay, that sucked and I'm done. I don't want to ever do that again. Like this, I don't want that feeling to be around, so I'm just not gonna ever play this game again. I'm not gonna
Mm-hmm.
like try to compete.
Yep.
I've done it. That's my shot, right? And whatever. Or the other approach that I can do is I can say, okay, I haven't achieved what I wanted to achieve, so there's more to achieve, and I have to achieve more. So
I like
like there's
that.
two approaches.
Yep.
And I don't think anyone is either like is better or worse inherently, right? It's just
Yes.
what do you want to do with your life and where do you see it going? And yeah.
Yeah. I think it's well said. Where a lot of those. So I like to think of those as mental shortcuts. Of this is me kind of cheating my thoughts a little bit to pick myself back up or get myself refocused. Someone could misuse those, and also sometimes they're really helpful. Like saying this is it is really good if you're able to say, okay, let's move forward. Saying this is it and it was everything and that I blew it would be super damaging and like mentally destructive. But you're using it as a pickup, saying, okay, moving forward. And then there's that other aspect you're pairing it with, this other shortcut saying, hey, more left to achieve, let's go pursue it. Now someone can make it to an extreme and they're like, this time, I studied for 10 hours a day and I failed. I'm going to study for 20 hours a day. It could be destructive, but in your case, you're balancing the two. Hey, I'm going to continue to pursue, live my life. It's going to keep going forward, seek out more achievements, and just get the ball rolling again. Keep it rolling because you've already, not like it stopped. Got to get ready for next tournament and qualify. Like it.
Yeah, exactly. I think like in some way, I'm not sure people necessarily deal with failure that much in life. Like I remember when I was young, failure was like a really big deal and it really was painful, and it kind of always is, right?
Yes.
I don't know, maybe for other people not so much, but I remember like
totally
failing my driving test. Like that felt like the end of the world. Like I felt so awful about it. And realistically, who cares, right? It
No,
literally not doesn't matter in any way, really. And I think there's something about that, like being able to grapple with the feeling of failure and move on from it is really important. And and it can give you a new sort of perspective and way to go through life if you're not afraid of the failure, but you have to just meet it and then push through it and go from there.
I think I completely agree. I think one mistake people make is they're afraid of being wrong, especially being seen being wrong, something public. Like, tell everyone you're taking your driving test and then you fail it. You have to start, they're like, hey, congrats on the driving test. And you're like, nope, no go. We got a no go, guys. You have to tell everybody you failed. And that's really tough. But I also think failure is often the quickest way to learn because it hurts the most. So if I was going to try to improve my chess skills, or Gwent skills, like, let's do Gwent. I'd rather play against a top 64 player on the ladder than somebody in rank 30. I'm going to stomp the rank 30 person. I'll feel really good about it, but also I'm not learning anything. While I'm going to get stomped by at least top 64 player, and I'm going to be humiliated over and over and over and over very publicly if I'm streaming it. But I'll learn really, really, really fast to be like, man, that card is destroying my deck. I need to tech these cards out. I need these cards in. Try again. I'm going to get better until I have a good lineup. And I think it's a healthier relationship with failure. And if you're too afraid of it and you're afraid of failing ever, then you don't try, and that's even worse. Because you've elaborate. Go for it.
I think a lot of people get into that mindset, right? And they're like, I'm just way too scared of failing, so I'm not going to put in the effort that I should. And I think I even did this quite a bit at school and stuff. Like, I just wouldn't revise very much for exams and things because I was thinking, if I fail, then it's fine because I know I didn't put work in. You know, that's just what's going to happen, right? And that's like a really self-destructive mindset, right?
Yeah. So I have also done that. I can relate. I remember there was a test I was studying for. It's called the CFP, Certified Financial Planner Test. It takes a year to study for. And the week right before the test, I was so nervous. I just started going home. Instead of studying, I just started drinking because I knew if I was drunk, I couldn't study. So like, no fault on my fault on my back. And then if I fail, it's like, well, that last week I was drinking. I just wasn't prepared. It's gonna be fine. There's like there's an alleviation that comes from self-sabotage or saying I'm not going to try or I'm not going to give it my best so I can protect my pride, my sense of self, saying, oh yeah, if I'm giving it my all, easy, 10 out of 10 would have won this. But exactly. No, I didn't. Yeah, it gets you out of it, but it's so self-destructive, as you said. Have you ever been in like a tournament situation or prepping for a tournament where you started noticing yourself falling into that kind of a habit? Or are you usually pretty good when it comes to tournament situations?
I don't know. I've played tournaments and like not cared very much about winning and like memed around a bit, but I wouldn't say that was because I was scared of failing. It was more just
wasn't invested.
I just felt like it,
Yes.
I don't know. Like for me, I can't escape the sting and the pain of losing in a tournament, and because I guess I put a lot of my ego and my pride on the line because that's what I feel like I'm good at doing and I've done in the past, right? So it's not something like I've already committed to. I have to put my all into this and I have to be good at this whenever I do it. I can't take it easy because then it's all sort of lost. All that I've built up. So
sounds like you have a sense of pride, a sense of self that is attached to winning, or at least trying to win, and so your fear of failure gets dwarfed by that fear of not fulfilling who you are, not being the person you want to be. So, and then you'll face one fear if the other fear is a lot scarier. And then of course, hopefully some positive ambition there too. Like, I really want to crush this. Can't always just be running from fear as your motivation. I mean, it could. It could be a exhausting one. Awesome. So if you don't mind me asking, how did you end up with Gwent? There are a lot of card games out there. Legends of Runeterra really blew up. Hearthstone always exists and does a fine job. How did you end up with just Gwent as being the primary focus?
I dabbled a bit with other card games. I've played a bit of Runeterra. I've played a bit of Hearthstone. Hearthstone was the first sort of card game I was playing, and I played it. It was fun. I got to, I was very excited to get to Legend rank.
Nice.
But I don't know. There was something about Gwent that was just. It just felt so like perfect and so just like all I could have ever really wanted, right? Like when I was playing it in The Witcher 3 is where I first encountered it. I was very addicted to the single player game of it, and I was like, damn dude, if this was an actual game that I could play against other people, like, that'd be so sick. And
Yes.
it's so funny. Like I literally was joking with my friend. I didn't know Gwent
Yep.
would be a game in real life, but I was joking with him, man, I want to go pro in this Gwent, the freaking card game. Like it's actually so I'm having so much fun with it. And it's just such a bizarre twist of fate that actually that ends up happening.
Yes.
But in some way it's,
Wild.
you know,
Hmm. No, that's
yeah, it's kind of
that.
a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? Because I was feeling
Hmm.
that I really would like to do that, and then
Boom.
oh, the opportunity arises, so it happens, right?
Yeah, and you have the guts to take the opportunity too. Because when you start with a new game, it's not like, oh, this is gonna be an esport. This is gonna be a career in a sense, or launch my future. You start playing it and start going with it, and then hey, look, it turns out you're really good at it. You're really smoking it. All that time in The Witcher 3 paid off. And now here you are, right? Like that's wild. That's a crazy journey. Do you feel satisfied with what you've done so far? Do you feel like a personal satisfaction from it?
Yeah, I think like I'm always worried. Like I don't know, nothing ever feels enough in a way for me. Like
Mm-hmm.
um, you know, there's always tournaments that I've missed, right?
Yep.
I've not like performed on the ladder as well as certain players. Like
Mm-hmm.
there's always something I could have done better, right? And I don't know. I guess the ego is always there saying, I would love for this ego, like ego saying, hey mate,
Player, but you still just can't win it all. There's no perfect player,
hmm.
and maybe unless there's androids, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
part of
Yeah,
it.
I guess
Mhm.
there's yeah. I do feel satisfied with it though to answer the question, but there's always this nagging feeling that there's more to do or there could have been more, right?
Yes.
Underneath it all, I guess.
I agree. I think I don't know. There's that momentum to keep going, keep pushing. So tell me, how do you
Hmm.
prep for Gwent Masters, or we can do that, or just tournaments in general? Because I imagine it's a lot of it's hidden behind the curtains and not being live streamed. Because of course you're all playing this meta game of predicting each other. So how does that
Hmm.
work?
Hmm. Uh, it's a bit, it's a bit of a grind. I don't know. I was playing just like it depends. Some tournaments I'm not going as crazy on it
Uh huh.
as I was with Masters for obvious reasons, right?
Yep.
But it's just a lot of playing, thinking, talking, like um, just a lot of like group chats with other brains and thinking
Mhm.
like what can we do here? What is the plan? I think in some ways it's probably similar to certain meetings that go on in
Mhm.
companies and stuff, right? Where they're like
Yeah.
deciding what the best strategy is for
On the
for
closed
whatever.
room, everyone's sitting there like, all right, we have one opportunity. I can't
Mhm.
blow it. The state of this company, this tournament depends on it. What have we got? A meeting of the minds. And so you're working with other
Mhm,
competitive
mhm.
players that are not in the tournament. Is that fair to say?
Yep, yep.
Nice.
And that's always been the way. I've always had a good other brain at least
Uh huh.
to chat to, and it's always invaluable. Like, on your own you get a bit stuck sometimes and a bit nothing's coming
Mhm.
to you, and having people to bounce ideas off is really really good. And then of course you have to just practice and test actually what you come up with after that. So
Uh huh.
it's usually just a big, you meet the minds, you think about stuff, you try to work out what the other people play and what is good and all this stuff, and then you test things
Uh
together.
huh.
You meet again and you think, how did the testing go? Is that sufficient for what we're doing here? And then you do it again, and it's just sort of that process over and over again until you find the perfect
So I love this because it's
thing.
almost like the tournaments aren't, or by the time the players are shown, the brackets made, and the decks are shown, tournaments like almost over. I think that's
Yeah.
hilarious. All the hard work, the real tournament was behind the scenes, and everyone in their clothes, prepping how they want. But in your case, you're getting a meeting of the minds, windows blacked out. It's like,
Mhm.
were you followed here? No, no. Okay, we're all here. Let's analyze. We have the profiles on the
Mm.
competition. Let's break it down. And then you submit your deck list. You show them all, and you're like, that went all right. Some positive, some negative, and it's like, well, I think I can win it all. These might be a problem. It's like, yeah, let's see what happens. And then of course, it doesn't always go prediction, but I think it's so fascinating that there's almost a tournament before the tournament, and that's really where a lot's decided. Also, quick shout out: we're getting a raid from Specimen Gwent. Thank you so much, my friend. Yeah,
Spessy.
Spessy.
Spessy helped me, by the way, in the prep.
Oh, did he?
So
That
shout
is awesome.
Yeah.
You should. I should also thank Spessy because he's about to undergo an interview this Saturday, and
Mm.
Freddybabes can tell you how bad it's been so far. An absolute disaster. Uh,
Yeah, it's just been miserable, man.
yeah,
Get me out of here.
just like putting the hand on the screen, walking away. That is. But the tournament. Going back to the tournament part, that is really fascinating. And how do you? So I feel like there's a nature of networking, right? So you get to one of the people who helped you the prep was Specimen Gwent for the Gwent Masters, and other people probably also behind the scenes. Do you think that in many ways, like that business networking mindset is important to be a good competitor, or do you think you can ever do a tournament alone?
Kind of. I wouldn't look at it as networking, although I think there are certainly some individuals who who
Mm-hmm.
compete that do, not to name names. But yeah, I would look at it more like, I mean, there's like when you're playing Gwent, you're gonna have friends who also play Gwent, right? Or
Yep.
who are competitive in nature. And I think, I mean, for me personally, I've always felt like there's numerous people I can call upon to who'll help me out,
Mm-hmm.
because they're good friends and they're good people. And yeah, I mean, like
Mm-hmm.
I guess the better thing would be it's important to be like friendly and not make a ton of enemies in the
Yes.
in
Not
the
burn
scene.
bridges.
Like even a guy
Mm-hmm.
like Game King, right? He's
Mm-hmm.
not played Gwent for some time, right? But he's able to come and say, "Hey, I need some help. Does anyone feel
Mm-hmm.
like being a generous person?" And no one wants to see
Mm-hmm.
a nice person just struggle and not have the brain meeting going on. So
Yep.
um, yeah,
So
just
that makes
is what
sense.
it is.
Where it's there's once a saying, I think it's positivity is worth fire is worth 5 points of IQ. Where if you're just being positive and not burning bridges, hey, when the chips are down, people will be there to support you. Get that meeting of the minds in the back room and help you prep for the tournament. Interesting. Do you think you're
I
gonna
think
be?
it's also just fun to be part of it from the other angle, right? Like to
Mm-hmm.
be the person helping prep. And I know like, funnily enough, no one ever asked me if they want help in a tournament, but if they did, then I'd be like, yeah, dude, I feel actually quite grateful that you've asked me and
Uh huh.
humbled by that. And I think there's also that aspect to it. Like it just feels nice for sort of everyone involved to be a part of something and
Interesting.
to try to make it happen.
Reminds me of that a bit of like almost like a life philosophy of that being a part of something greater and also supporting those around you and finding satisfaction in like it. Do you
hmm
think
hmm
there's going to be any changes you make the next tournament and how you prep, or is it at this point so routine? So I do A, B, and C. That you're just gonna just do the same thing again.
if anything, I would like to do the sort of exact same process, to be honest, because I
Mm-hmm.
feel like I've some tournaments in the past I wasn't really anywhere close to as prepped for this tournament, but
Uh huh.
this tournament I felt just because of the people helping me. I had Pieball, Green Knight, Spessy, and they were all, I mean, they're
Nice.
all very good players. Green Knight
Mm-hmm.
not playing so much these days, but he, in his prime, very, very good. And
Mm-hmm.
Pieball, of course, incredible player. So
Yes.
um, if I could just have those guys again, that'd be sick because
Uh
they're
huh.
like, we're like, I'm against Adzakov. I need to prepare this matchup. Give
Mm-hmm.
me Piebol, the best player to,
Yes. Just
to test this matchup against or whatever.
nice.
Oh,
Uh huh.
Spessy, master deck builder, come to me with the ideas, and this kind of, it just
Yeah.
felt very flowing and good. So yeah, for this tournament, I felt super prepped, and I would love for it to always be like that, to be
Nice.
honest.
So as soon as the deck lists are announced, you just like queue up these, reach out to your little your master, mind master, say, all right, I need you to play me in this matchup, my deck versus this deck. Like let's do it 7 times. figure out the different lines of play, and then when you hit the match, interesting.
Mm-hmm,
So it makes a lot of sense, like on that level as well. Of when you show up in the tournament, you're playing the game. It's just like, I've done this match 25 times. This will be number 26. Where I put an equally skilled pilot in their place of their deck. I know what your hands can look like. I know the lines of play you're gonna take. We're just gonna go for the motion. And that is so interesting. Then what, like, wow. Because it really is.
I would look at it. It's almost like in other sports you have, like maybe boxing or something. You have like a coach and a guy that's like, I don't know, fucking wiping the sweat off you or something, right? It's almost like that. You have like this support team, and they're as much a part of the whole tournament as you, the actual person that has to perform, are. Like you're all in it as much as one another, right? And you're all like, you all have the same goal. You're all working towards it. You're all doing different purposes and functions in that sort of team, but it's the team really that's winning. And it's sad that it doesn't get seen as it being that. And I think that's very important. It's not just the player, but the team around them.
Would you like some kind of, in the esports, right? Like if I were to say who got first, second, third, we go down the list and just name those individual players. Would you like in the Gwent esports saying, oh, actually this is the supports team, or this is the maybe a fancier name, so you can name the players that have been helping you?
Yeah, I think that would be really cool. And I'm a little bit bummed because in the past, in tournaments, maybe it's just because it was online this time, but usually they were asking sort of, is there anything you'd like to say, or like, would you like to shout out anybody, stuff like that after, so you could at least say, yo, my support team, we're this is who's really been winning this tournament, not just me. I guess the problem is not everyone has a support team, or like people around them that are helping, or not to the same extent. And maybe some people even have like 10 people that they want to thank, and then it might just be a bit weird, right? If you're like,
well,
this is team 1 with 11 players, and this is Adzakov on his own. Good job, Adzakov.
But I feel
might be a bit strange.
Maybe a bit strange, but also I feel if that's what's really going on behind the scenes, I don't know, like if I'm learning from you right now, I feel like there should be an acknowledgement of, hey, this isn't just like grab 8 players and go. I mean, we have all these high level players contributing, backing their conceptual horse, trying to make this win happen, and they're all excited about it. And some people are like, I'm going solo, Lamau. Other people are going to be, have like teams of 10, but I think there is, even just acknowledging it, I think gives more insight into the esports, what's really going on and what it takes to go into a tournament, which is, I feel like what commentary is all about anyways.
Yeah, no, actually, I'm 100% with you, and I think it would add a very cool angle, right? Because especially for this World Masters tournament, like you had players like Shaggy, like Red Raim, like Saber, like all these big Pyreball, all these big sort of names in Gwent at the moment, and they're all sort of part of these different support networks, and they're helping different players, and you could have that angle of like, we've got Colomone here, but he is supported by X player, right? And we've got, life coach who's been aided by Red Raim or whatever, right?
Yep.
And that would be pretty, I don't know, that'd be another cool angle to approach and to share some of the spotlight. And I think that'd be quite cool.
No, I feel like it'd be cool. Also, almost drama where it's like, oh, Specimen Gwent decided to back life coach in this next tournament. Did he have a falling out with Freddybabes? What happened behind the scenes? We go live right now to the studio. Interview of Speci.
Yes.
I think
we need more of that, actually.
Yeah, I know. I need some like crazy drama. I'm not sure it's like the right way, but I think it would, at the minimum, be interesting. Wow, that is so wild. So you have this competitive drive, a sense of self that enjoys winning these tournaments. Do you think you're going to broaden out to other games ever and try to get some other? Is that something you'd like to have as part of it, or is the goal like to keep winning in Gwent tournaments and really establish yourself as one of the best, if not the best Gwent player of all time? Like, how do you weigh all of that?
That's something that has bothered me quite a bit. Is like, I would love to be good at other games in the same way that I've been good at Gwent, or at least played in tournaments and such. I would really like that. I feel like card games are such a, like, I kind of have a brain for it, and it's quite, in some ways it's quite an easy esport to do, right? Like it's not requiring a lot of mechanical skill, and it's just very cerebral, but also not cerebral in the sense that like chess is,
Mm-hmm.
where it's all cerebral and your
Oh.
brain has to be just, you have to study so
Uh-huh.
much, and you know.
Yes, I agree.
Um,
Uh-huh. In the sense of like
so
chess solved game. Like when the good players get there, they're like it takes 40 moves before somebody makes a new move, and they're like, aha, it's a brand new game of chess. There have been actually 800 games played of these moves, but finally someone has made a different move. While in these card games, right, you're saying there you have a huge collection of cards. They all are constantly getting rebalanced. It's always a new, fresh game. And a lot of prep goes before. You come in with your own deck of cards, your own approach to the game. You meet your opponents, and you play a new game that's never been played before. Fascinating. Elaborate more. You have this attraction to card games. Are there, and you do, it does sound like you have some pride, some interest in trying to dominate some of the other games as well.
yeah, for sure. Like if like I've toyed with the idea of I just want to pick a game and just play it like non-stop, really
Mm-hmm.
really try like I don't know, 12 hours a day, whatever it takes, just
Mm-hmm.
non-stop. I will get really good at this game. And then I'm always like, yeah, but kind of a lot of effort
Yep.
and these games are maybe more popular than Gwent is, and I don't know if I have the raw talent for it, and all these kind of questions come. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Like coming back to that sort of topic of how do you want to look back at stuff, right?
Yep.
And uh, it would be so cool if on my deathbed I could be like, yeah, I came into Gwent and I fucked them up in Gwent, and then I went to this game and then I, did the same there, kind of thing. But
Like that.
yeah, I would like that a lot, but I can only sort of see how the
I
future plays out, right?
I love
And
that. I
yeah.
can imagine just like hit posters, like here's the Gwent hit poster on the wall. You're, like 80, and you're in your room that's like Gwent has a hit mark on it. Have all your tournament trophies
Yeah.
around it. Go to Hearthstone, you have a hit mark there. Like I won these tournaments. From Legends of Runeterra, you're like, oh yeah, I took down all the top players. Did it within 6 months from going from nothing. Wipe them out. Just like little like X's on people's face. Cracks me up.
Yeah.
Do you have any game that catches your eye like that right now that you're having this debate over, or are you just saying like card games in general, just pick one and let's just do it?
Like that's the thing. Like card games, not so much really, because I just don't actually enjoy the process of grinding them.
Uh huh.
Gwent was something different.
Yes.
Like it's just such a different game, and it's almost
So
not even
unique.
really a card game in many ways.
Yeah, it is
Um,
so mental and so weird and different. I love it. The round
mm,
system in particular is what captivates me. But you're right. You're
mhm,
not going to
mhm.
see that elsewhere. So it seems like you're kind of at a weird crossroads then, where it's like I don't have another game, but I want these. I want this satisfaction of crushing. Uh,
Yeah,
mhm.
exactly. And equally with other games, like it's not, oh God, what have I done? I could like play a League of Legends or something, or a Counter-Strike, but it
Mhm.
just it's
Yeah.
already so big and established, and I'm also not that into the game that I would want to grind it for like,
Mhm.
you know, to essentially get yourself into mega super incredible player shape. So
Yes.
it's a bit of a tricky one. Like I'm kind of hoping at some point there'll be some game that is just so perfect in the way that Gwent was for me,
Mhm.
that I can also just sink into. But
Yeah. Almost like waiting, and then also one of the benefits is you get a different role. Find a new game that resonates well. You might be one of the big personalities who can bring it up. I know early on, like Life Coach and Swim come to mind as
mhm.
really established figures that yourself too, ironically, but really helped establish the game and get people drawn in with the personalities. And you could probably do that for a smaller card game that comes out later and build it up
Yeah, possibly.
if that's an achievement you want.
Yeah.
That is. Um,
Well, that's the thing, right? If it is
mhm.
the smaller the game, the sort of smaller the achievement as well in some ways. So it's a bit like it would be so
Tough.
cool to be a top player in like one of the really popular games, right? Like a
Hmm.
CS:GO. Like I
Yes.
don't know how you'd feel about it, or League of Legends. Like I'm
Uh huh.
sure you can imagine it would feel really fucking cool to be on
Yeah.
a pro league team and have all these people talking about you and competing.
Yeah. And
But
having.
that's the problem. Like the bigger achievement, the bigger the game and the harder it is also,
Hmm.
right?
Would you
Um,
ever try to succeed in that area, but not as a competitor, but as a content creator? Because one thing you have is an unbelievably you have financially sound situation where you have time, you can try things, and you also have a very an analytical mind. You've competed at a top level in a competitive game and succeeded. You could probably bring a lot of insight into these games that a lot of other people can't, as okay, League of Legends has been around 10 years as one of the biggest, and the biggest game in the world.
Mm.
But there's only 10 years worth of professional players. There's only so many professional esports players out there that can bring so much insight. Would you ever want to try to compete in something in the world of esports, but not win via game, but win via, it could even be coaching, could be content creation, etc. A non-player achievement.
Kind of interesting. Like, I actually haven't really considered this as a possibility, but now you're saying it, it kind of, you know, it's like this freedom thing, right? Like, I technically do have the freedom to do that, and I'm thinking about it. I'm like, maybe that would be cool. I don't know. Like, for me, the content creation is cool and all, but it's not the same feeling, and it never will be the same feeling as competing. And so I guess maybe I'm getting a little bit. I might be getting a bit distracted or trapped by that thinking of like, man, I have to compete because that's the cool feeling. And if I can't compete, then it doesn't even really matter what I'm doing because it's not competing, you know? Like, but yeah, I think that would be quite interesting. Maybe that's, I mean, I feel like you've actually given me a potential thing to think about here and to, you know, maybe not immediately, but in some future.
Another path you can walk if you want. Right? If you don't want to be the one shooting in Counter-Strike, you can be the one strategizing in Counter-Strike. If you want to get more close to action, or you know, whatever it is, or be a team owner together, or even in Gwent, you could have your own Gwent team. Get them 5 people together and see how many tournaments you can crush. Take out Team of 5 in gaming, choose in all the rest.
Could be fun. I think there is one thing that I'll say, which is like when you've achieved something, right? It can be a bit tricky to like go back to square one and reset. Like if you get used to, I'm gonna stream and there'll be some people watching, like because I'm playing Gwent or whatever, or I'm gonna make a video and some people will watch it, or like people will care about my insights, right? And to go from that to, oh, hold on a minute, I have to reset, and most of the people that followed me before are not gonna care about this thing, then yeah, that can be difficult. I don't think I have the same draw or appeal as Life Coach does, for example. Like he's just very sort of established and
well,
you know, well known at this point.
It kind of depends.
I mean, maybe
depends on what you want, Freddie.
Not to the same extent for sure.
Well,
but...
maybe I don't know. I feel like you're selling yourself short here, my friend. Where you just got to kick on that competitive drive. But for what Life Coach did and what you talked about, they're very different. Because as you mentioned, like Life Coach had very weird decks for the tournament, and if I were to take a guess, it would be not that he didn't prep hard, but he definitely didn't spend the year prepping for Gwent and Masters, because he prioritized different life goals and things he wanted to do. Right, his priorities were different. I feel like one of the benefits of those priorities, one of the outcomes, is a well-established 1,000-person audience. That when he starts streaming Gwent, he adds 50% or increases the viewer population of people watching Gwent streams by 50%. He's given up entirely on YouTube. But he said, okay, you know, like what I want to do will lead to these outcomes of having a stable audience. You could do that. And honestly, if you were really focused on it, because I don't think Life Coach's goal in life is to be a 10,000 person streamer, you have time resources that you could, you know, get your ticket and see if this path actually exists for you. I think it's a selling of shortness there. But I would say there is a reality of if you want to be a big streamer, that's very different than being a big Gwent competitor, which is very different than competing in a different game, trying to get that to a top level. You can do some, but maybe not all. But maybe you can
right. Like
eat it.
I think. I mean, thanks by the way for the getting a lot of compliments and praise here, which is certainly feeding my ego.
Hey, look, I'll feed your ego. I'll tear you down. I called out that the Northern Realms deck was a little bit odd. But you know, I call like I see it. Please.
Nah, but like, yeah, it's possible, right? And I think that's the thing. Like, I think you're right to say that if I were to just switch games and begin to grind and really just, I have all the freedom, I have all the time, I can now just put it all into this. Something can come from that, and like the problem is the sort of demoralizing factor of resetting a bit. Even if it doesn't have to be all the way to 0, but just resetting. It's like you're trying to regain ground that you've already covered, right? And it's not that that's impossible. It's just that it's a bit demoralizing, a bit. It feels like I don't know how to explain the feeling. But
do you feel like that's a fallacy? Where okay, so let's say let's even rewrite history. You just won Gwent Masters. You just won. You won this past Gwent Masters. That's done, but that's progress, right? You have another part of your life, these snapshots, if we keep the continuity thing alive. Don't get too philosophical like we did at the beginning, but the snapshot of you did it, right? You've done this. It's not like that's gone. That achievement cannot be taken from you. Whatever you do next is a step forward in a minimum in time sense. And also just like with your own abilities, you have more time to develop. You're better than you've ever been. It's not really a full reset. I feel like there's almost a fallacy there of, tournament's done. I get the idea of coming down and having like this emotion of like, oh, it's over. Like I've done it. I've done this. This is what I did. But it's not like it's gone. It's permanent. And then the next thing is just another step forward. It's not like trying to regain what you lost because you're done with what.
No, I'm with you.
Are you? I don't know. I'm worried.
No, I think you're right. It is a fallacy. Like I agree. Like that, the mentality should be one that can just I jump into this new thing. I don't care how it will go at first. I will just push forward and dedicated to it. Like I don't know. Emotions are a different beast, right? And sometimes it can just feel a bit rubbish. Like, man, I've jumped into this new thing and I'm not immediately the biggest hit, right? Like, that can just feel a bit rubbish, and it is a fallacy to think that it should be or that it's a step back or something. But that doesn't change the fact that it might be tricky to, to push through that.
Well, do you ever
think you've made me consider it, and you've made me like I am now feeling like this is like I'm hearing it from you, and you sound like a guy that if you had the opportunities that I had would maybe make more of it. And that's something that I'm sort of reflecting on a bit now.
Well, two things. One, your opportunities are your own. There's no make more of it. Like if I was just Bezos, yes, I would not have spent $500 million on a cruise ship. But I don't have his opportunities, and so likewise, you get to make the most of your own, and no one else can. What I would also say is, emotions are their own thing. Like they just are what they are. They're chemicals. We have minimal control. You can try to reconcile them, but they're there. And it's okay, I think, in an aspect of, okay, you have these negatives. I'm not trying to like say you should not feel this way. It's okay to feel of it, but it's also good to acknowledge the fact that like they are feelings. But the reality is that the progress you've made is still progress. What you've done has been done, and you're going forward. I also wonder for you, is there a bit of fear of the unknown where you hit this high, this emotion, this dopamine driven high, this adrenaline rush high? You're not back, like you're far, the achievement is done, you're now far away from getting back to that high again. Is there fear, do you ever wrestle a fear of not being able to achieve that high, that adrenaline rush, that competition again when you try something?
Oh, yeah. That's tied in with the emotions of like, oh, this feels like a step back and this feels like it's not going anywhere. And for sure, like it's a fear of the unknown, a fear of like maybe now I have thrown away the peak that I had and I will no longer, like I've already reached the peak. It's over. What am I doing here? What
that's
like that kind of a feeling is there for sure.
That's got to be tough to reconcile with. So I do hope one thing is, I feel like I might have been almost too hard on you, poking something like, yeah, Freddie, you're great. But the other part is like, it's okay to feel that way. I think it happens for a lot of people. I know in my life, I was one time when I was prior to streaming full time, when I was in my workplace where I was just on fire, I was getting praise from every manager, every department manager. Everyone's like, John is the best. I'm like, wow, I'm rocking it at this finance company, one of the largest in the world. But eventually it starts to fade away. Like time passes, your achievement is just like, oh, that happened. Like, oh God, how do I get it back? Or am I just a normal person again? What do I do? Is that it? Am I going to go back to being regular? Like, oh, a lot of thoughts, and it's tough. Tough to figure out what that next step is, and then wing it all over again. See if you can chase the high. So I sympathize with that.
Yeah.
Do you find that ever?
No, it has.
Please.
No, it has made me, like what you're saying here has made me feel like I've just been sort of a bit. But it comes back to maybe like I'm not really finding something that I want to particularly do right as well. Like you want to have the passion for it that allows you to dedicate and push forward, and not just like it's one thing. Like I'm sort of a kind of person that prefers to have the passion and then do stuff as a result of the passion, rather than to say, okay, I'm going to just create a goal and then I hope the passion will just come as a result of there being a goal, if that makes sense. Like,
well, I think it's tough. passion I feel like is a tough spot to try to start motivation, right? Where let's I'm gonna give you a special skill, and I bet things will change very quickly when it comes to motivation. You've just become the best Hearthstone player in the world. You don't know it yet, but you know you haven't proved it, but you know that you actually are just now the best Hearthstone player in the world. Think you'd have passion for playing Hearthstone all of a sudden if you were just
Yeah, I
right?
mean,
Uh-huh.
that's fair. That's fair. Yeah.
So I'd say that there's kind of a paradox there of
But
wait for
yeah,
passion. One of the things that you want is from our conversation. Let me know if I'm wrong. Is you want that high again, that competition, that satisfaction of when you run into a good player and you stomp them in a match. You're like, I am better than you. All my prep, my effort, my meeting of the minds, the years it took to get here, I'd amount to more than what you were able to put together. I'm gonna move on to the next opponent. Enjoy, you enjoy whatever tournament wins you get. It's not about the money, it's about the pride, it's about winning. And you move on, you keep going. I feel that is almost an irony of it takes time to get to there. And you grinded Gwent in The Witcher 3, grinded Gwent when it just came out. And then you built up the skills and you do it. Where if you had the skills in another game, I bet you would do it. I bet you would chase it. But you're not going to get the skills if you don't start chasing.
kind of true, but like from my perspective, it's like I had the feeling and the want to just play Gwent for the sake of it, right?
Ah.
Because I wasn't playing it just because I thought, oh, I'm going to be freaking amazing at this game and this will become a career opportunity and I'm going to compete in tournaments and stuff. Like right until even the challenger that I won, for me, it was still just a kind of oh, I'm just doing this because I really enjoy it. Like it's just a passion, and I didn't even think, like I was considering dropping out of uni, but I was like, I mean, where is this really going? Like this is just like a little fun distraction, right?
And did you drop out of
So
uni? I have a bigger
yeah.
follow-up. Did you? Ah, there we go. Third technical one. It's all good. You get to see infinites.
What the hell, dude?
I
Does it do that?
don't know. It's part of the fun.
But yeah,
Did you end up dropping out of uni? And then I have a different question. It's just my own curiosity.
I did. Yeah, I was only there for like one term.
That's a power move. That's all good. Okay. What was I gonna ask? Hold on. Oh, do you think your sense of competition and chasing that high kind of corrodes your love of other competitive games?
That's interesting. I don't know. It certainly this is a weird feeling to unpack. It's sort of in the past there was like a real achievement in achieving a certain rank or climbing in some way, right? Because that in some way that can be a peak, right? It can be like, oh, my biggest achievement is I got to diamond rank in League of Legends, right? Whatever.
Yep.
And now it's like you can do that same thing, and well, guess what? I'm a freaking pro in that other game. So what am I doing here?
Yes.
I'm playing in the baby section, right?
Yes.
In this game, and then it's a bit demoralizing, and it feels a bit, yeah.
That seems
so
like
there's
a
that
tough barrier.
Yeah.
I feel like that would ruin a lot of competition. Like I enjoy Gwen, but also it's because I'm not aiming to compete. My proudest achievement right now is a Pyrotech got won a 1 in 4 shot. I was able to keep like coach from pro rank for like one extra day. Well, I felt a little bad, but it felt really good. I laughed. It was so great. I do feel bad it was this game before pro, but like that's like a low achievement. But man, I can imagine hitting like, oh yeah, I was pro in this other game, and now I'm like, diamond in league, which is like, okay, you're top 1% in the world, but in Gwent, you're at the top 0.001%. You're professional. You're one of the best that's ever played. You might not be able to replicate that in this game, or it will take you years to get up there. But also, I feel like I wonder if as you mentioned, or I mentioned earlier, like corroding the fun of it. Where if you're always whatever competitive game you pick, if you're like, I should be pro in this, get that adrenaline rush, almost a new barrier to playing the game and enjoying the game.
Yeah, especially when I think a part of it for me personally is like the feeling of improving and of being at a very high level is a lot of the fun of those kind of games. So if suddenly I feel like that is not on the cards, right, or it just feels diminished, that achievement, then that's also taking away from the fun aspect of the game itself.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's tough. It's an extra burden from you enjoying something and also engaging in something.
hmm hmm But it's very cool to talk about these kind of things because
Uh-huh.
yeah, and I think you do a very good job of of probing and asking and trying to sort of understand. And I think I just feel like it's worth mentioning because I feel like not many people are very good at that. Like that in itself is quite a skill, I think.
Flattery is my favorite weakness. Um,
Yeah,
uh,
but no, for real, like a lot of people are not like everyone seems to often be focused on themselves a bit, right?
mhm.
And I think you do a very good job of flipping that a bit, and yeah. And I think, I mean, I'm even talking now, and I feel like I feel a bit bad that I'm talking so much and that it's so much about me and stuff.
The whole point of an
Um,
interview. Well,
yeah, yeah, I suppose.
oh, I feel like it's I don't know if you're trying to wrap up. I didn't actually ask you how much time you have. I'm just enjoying the conversation. Let me know when you want to wrap up. Uh,
No, I'm enjoying it as well. I don't have any, whenever as
yeah.
well. It's
Well, we'll just go until the
uh,
conversation gets stale. But no, I really enjoy it, and I feel like this is the kind of conversation I was setting out to have when I started doing the interviews. Like, look, there's a
mhm.
ton of people that are going to interview you about Gwent esports and such, but I want to get to know you, and I think that's a fascinating part of streaming, where we show the screen and it's the face, but what goes on in here? There's a lot more to it. Even when I talked to you for 5 minutes before the stream while I was setting up the video, make sure everything looks good. Like, what are your passions? I couldn't find anything about them. And you're like, oh, philosophy and music, and we haven't even touched on music yet. And I'm specifically making music. And that's so fascinating to me. And then you start to delve in, and all of a sudden, you're an unbelievably thoughtful person who contemplates a lot, interesting struggles, and that's like what I wanted to bring out. So yeah, you should be talking a lot. I'm grateful that you're letting me like open up your mind and digging
Mhm.
deep into problems. And not everyone's going to share the same problems. A lot of people are not going to be sitting there saying, "Oh, I'm never going to compete on a high level. I don't understand." But the approach I took to the interview, told you at the beginning, ignore the audience. Their job is to pick out what they enjoy. I'm glad I get to just chat with you,
Mhm.
and I've loved the conversation so far. It's been so much fun.
Yeah, yeah. Same. I've loved it, and I think it goes back to it. Like, I don't see a lot of people doing this kind of conversation. Maybe I'm just a bit.
There aren't. That's why I'm doing it. It's an opportunity. I'm not gonna
Yeah, I
miss
mean,
it.
I think it's just a really cool thing. I think you could do this with anyone, right? It doesn't have to be Gwent. It doesn't have
Mm-hmm.
to be whatever. It would be so cool to see you like hit the mainstream and be interviewing like some of the really, because I think everyone is putting on some kind of a facade, right, online,
100%.
especially the big creators, the big personalities, like, and to really drill down. And I don't know if everyone is going to be able to have that kind of a conversation, right? But
No, and it's been interesting. Even in the first, but I think one, two, three. You're the fourth guest I've had, and they've all gone differently. But if you want to
mhm,
sneak into the
mhm.
master plan, I mentioned that supervillain mindset at the beginning. Absolutely, it's all the plan. And I have a step-by-step guide on how to achieve that. But yes, that is where I like to go because I think I really dislike how getting into my master plan, but like how media
Mhm,
divides
mhm.
us and how there are all these barriers, there's superficial filters, and how we talk, how we evaluate things, where we get our media from, how media evaluates things, and if I can create a space that people can express themselves, show who they are, what they worry about, and enable other people to benefit from that, talk about the tough subjects that people don't know how to engage in, right? No, most people aren't going to sit there and be like, what's high level competition? How's it weigh on you? How do you manage that? What goes on behind the scenes in tournament prep might give someone an idea to how to prepare for the next interview. All kinds of weird conversations that aren't talked about. I'd love to have those. And on a selfish level, I mentioned I have a lot of empathy. To satisfy that empathy, I would, engage in these conversations. Seems like a big win for me. So win across the board from what
Mhm,
I can
mhm.
tell. And I appreciate
Yeah,
you
yeah.
having it so far. Uh huh.
I think you're rocking it.
Thank you. I have a long way to go, man. I've enjoyed this one so far. Let's keep it going. And let's see.
Mhm.
Okay. Oh yeah, I already got another one for you. You ready for this one? Let's talk about work
Uh,
ethic. I'm super curious about work
Work
ethic
ethic.
because that's a huge part in competing at a top level. It's a huge part also, almost like an interesting mix paradoxically in your life right now, while you're trying to figure out what to do next. So I'd love to break it down. Let's start with the tournament aspects because I feel like that's more defined currently. What did it take for you to get second place at the recent Gwent Masters?
in terms of work ethic,
Yes.
it's really cool for me. So as soon as I got the email for the World Masters, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like a flip sort of switches in my brain, and life is no longer about just do whatever's fun, do whatever's no. The only thing that matters is this tournament. So
Okay.
it's like it's not even a thing about work ethic. It's like all that I want to even do is work towards this goal. Like I don't even want to. I'm actually stressed out if I take any time to do something else. Like I don't want to relax. I don't want to watch TV. I don't want to watch YouTube.
Yep.
I don't want to play games. No. Like so it's different to this idea of like I think that's what the passion really is. Like when you drill down to passion and what that constitutes, like it's different to revising for a test that you kind of have to do and you feel a bit rubbish about it. It's not the same thing. This is the passion that I have and I just have to. That's all I care about right now. I don't even, and I'm not upset about that. In fact, I'm very happy that it's the case.
Yeah. Would you say it's almost obsessive, but not like in a negative sense, like, oh, that person's like obsessed with that? It's just like, this is my obsession. It is my sole focus. I will execute on it because this is what I want.
Yeah, for sure.
Nice. And then that has to be really tough because then as soon as you're done, I get it even more now. Where like the switch turns off and you're like, now what?
Yeah.
After like last 6 months, get the email, done. And then get done, boom. How long are you able to sustain those obsessive periods for? Again, not obsessive in like a negative sense. You get so
I guess like the upper limit would be like maybe 2 months. I think beyond that it's a bit. It just it doesn't work, right? And I don't think I've ever done it for that long, right? So, but yeah, and I don't know. It sort of just all flows. It just feels natural, right? It's like if there's passion for a thing, then there's passion for a thing. It's not. I don't view it as like I now need to focus on being obsessed about this. It's more just that's how it is because it has to be that way, and there's nothing else, right?
No, I think.
I wonder if there's anything similar in other aspects of life, right? Like, because I'm trying to like I don't get obsessed in this way about anything else really. I would not. It's probably because the stakes were so high for this tournament as well, right? It's like you kind of put a lot on the line and say this is really important for my future and whatnot.
I think there's a lot of truth to what you said there. It's on both an so interesting. Where do I want to break this one down? My own thoughts. Give me a moment to organize them. Okay, I think people as a whole, generalize a bit, can find those traits, but not sometimes they're healthy and sometimes it's not. For example, I think focusing hard on winning the Olympics or winning a gaming tournament can be really healthy. It can also be unhealthy. Imagine you're only sleeping 4 hours a night for 2 months. That would be really bad. But you were able to say, okay, I'm going to get a good night's rest, eat food, but then I'm going to play. That's okay, right? To win an Olympics, to win a tournament, that's what it requires. I think there are people who also delude themselves about what obsession is, and I think that's where the danger begins. Well, there's the unhealthy aspect, but also the aspect of not actually seeking what you want. Where this happens. Do you ever watch Healthy Gamer GG or Dr. K, is what he's known as?
Yeah, I've seen a few. Yeah.
He talks about he works with some high-ranking executives and tries to help them with their therapy problem. And Dr. K, for people watching, is a therapist who does a lot of streaming as well about therapy. He's talking about like how these people will come in and say, "Oh man, if only I was the managing director, would I be happy in life and satisfied?" And then that person, his patient will leave. The other one comes in, it's the managing director, and the managing director will be there like, man, if only I was the vice president, my problems would leave. And then they leave, and they come back, and then the vice president comes in, it's like, oh my gosh, if only I was the president of this company, I would be content. Yeah. And the president comes in, is like, I'm at the top, now what? I'm really unhappy. I think there is a tendency, obsession I feel like is not a good or bad thing. It's how you manage it. It sounds like I feel like have nailed half of it from what I'm getting. Where you are so happy, so obsessed, and grinding away for that half. But then as soon as it goes away, it sounds like you lose this structure. Now what? Until you get the email for the next tournament and getting that next high or the opportunity to. And that's a tough problem. And I mean, it's not like a set answer. You have to answer it for yourself, but it's interesting.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I wish I could capture that feeling in more aspects of life, right? And and I'll sort of harness passion, and just say like, here's a thing I'm enjoying. Now I will really obsess, and you know, but I guess it's just one of those things that does not. You can't force it, right? Otherwise, it becomes unhealthy, or it becomes
Well, I think it's
it doesn't
complicated.
actually work.
It's hard to force it. I would agree. I think contextualizing it is doable. But so, for example, tell me why, in words, would you say the Gwent Master tournament in particular really snapped your focus versus maybe some of the other Gwent tournaments you competed in?
I suppose just because it sort of encapsulated my aspirations for the future, and sort of everything that I'd built up the tournament to be, right? Like I'm trying to say it in a nice way, like not a convoluted way, but essentially I put a lot of emphasis on it throughout like the past few years, and then it really snapped because it's that thing that has been in the background and now it's suddenly at the forefront.
Yeah, so it sounds like it gave you this grand purpose, and you got to do all these little steps to build up to it. So I think one thing that comes to my mind is, okay, if you're gonna always assign, let's say you wanna, in your piano, it sounds like you play piano, an earlier comment, that you want to be playing on the biggest, grandest stage in the world, whatever the grand piano tournament competition of all time is. To build up to that high, though, you need to do all these little highs. But that's going to be tough because you've already held the big high. You want that one again from Gwent. But it's going to take years and years and effort to have a shot. And that's a lot of time without that hardcore obsession. A lot of time without necessarily being satisfied. Because you're going to, crush a piano tournament. And then you're not going to have the same high again because you're not doing the grandstand yet. You gotta build up. And then nice part about Gwent, it's like a 3-year build up. But like, if you're going to be the best pianist in the world, I bet it'd be decades. Takes a lot of time to get back to that high. Rough. Have you what in those obsessive periods, what do you give up? I know, like, for example, I'm doing a lot of work right now on the stream, and I'm noticing my social relationships are suffering, making a very difficult conscious choice of which ends up being prioritized. Do you have to make those kind of choices? And if so, what are some examples?
Definitely relationship suffers a bit because I'm meeting with a girlfriend less, talking to friends less who are not involved in the prep, things like that. So just relationships across the board are a bit, taking a bit of a hit. But in some way, I don't know. In some way, it's also a test of a relationship, right? If it can survive those kind of periods, then it's chill, right? And if not, then it's not really a problem that it doesn't survive because it wasn't that strong to begin with. So.
Yeah, no, I'm not a love guru here. That's one of my weak points in life. But I would say that it makes a lot of sense to me that you would need to have a partner, if you want a partner, that is, that can put up with these periods in the sense of it's something you value. From what I can tell in our conversation, you value that competition, the height, having some obsessive prep, and then trying to get that reward for all the hard work and that feeling of winning. And that's just not going to go away. Whether it's Gwent, another card game, a different aspect of life, you need to have someone who can deal with that and enjoy that and support you through that.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, I don't know how the people are with like friend relationships, but I tend to be pretty laid back and pretty like I don't like maybe we're getting and we're getting quite personal in general, but like I don't, and I wonder how this is for you, but I don't like engage with my friends that often. I'm not like always messaging them or always talking to them, and it's not something that I particularly like miss or crave or anything. I feel quite content to like be to check in every now and then, maybe to play games every now and then, but not not to be constantly talking and stuff. So I think that helps in that aspect, right? When the very big intense period comes, I'm not suddenly abandoning friends that I were normally talking to a lot. So
no, I think it's interesting. In my life, it was when I worked a 9-to-5 job. I think it was like 9:30 to 6:30. But after that, I'd go home, grab a drink, pop on Discord, play some games with friends. That would be the evening every time. But all of a sudden, I do this. It's like this last weekend, I didn't play without having something pre-scheduled. I just did not game with other people. I was sitting there banging out YouTube video after YouTube video while streaming 8 hours a day, 6 days a week. And I was like, this is different. And there is a sacrifice that is involved in that. Like the dailiness is gone. But I will say the relationships that I've had where it's like touching base once a week, those ones feel strong. It's the ones that require the frequent day in, day out that have had to evolve. Not necessarily go away, but I have to be comfortable with the idea of like, oh, I'm not going to know necessarily everything going on in your life. But as long as you're comfortable with me touching base once a week, once a month, once every year, like, we're cool. Like, this is going to be a fine friendship. But you have to, I think it's one of the things about content creators, streamers, or just the people who work a lot. They have to have a different style of relationship than the people who dedicate themselves, putting relationships at number one. Not it's a bad relationship, but it's different on the daily, day-to-day.
True. How do you feel about this sort of content grind and like pumping stuff out? Are you feeling a passion for it? Are you feeling, is it kind of like a working experience? How does it
kind of surreal. Let's do a couple of comparisons. I think the most comparative time is I mentioned like a medical education software company. I did client or services for them. They were a true startup. Now, here's how you think about startups. Here's how a startup actually is. You think about the $1 million backing, this company, got a bunch of money thrown at them, got a big inventor. Here's what my startup experience is. This is the nitty gritty. You didn't get paid unless somebody sent you a check. And you're trying to bootstrap your way day in and day out. And I literally in this grind of nonstop. There's no real turning off. I was never able to shut down. I just like lost my sense of self. And I think there's a bit of that in content creation as well, because it's really, really demanding. So this past week, like I had my best week on YouTube yet. The cost was I didn't see any of my friends that week, other than pre-scheduled ones, which was fine. I felt very satisfied because I got the results I wanted in that week. Instead of putting out 1 video a week or a day, I put out 2 to 3 videos a day on top of streaming 8 hours a day, 6 of those days. I was like, wow, this is really paying off because I'm getting to all the new expansion content before everybody else is. And I'm getting to eat up all those views and the subscribers, and it's really good. But that's also an insane way to live your life. And I think the answer, goes back to the balance of obsession that you've, illustrated so nicely, where it doesn't sound like your obsessiveness when trying to win the tournament is actually unhealthy. If anything, I would say it's super healthy. It's a drive. You try to surround yourselves with people that understand that drive, whether it's other fellow Gwent players that are going to play and support you, like Specimen Gwent, or just like have relationships with a partner and friends that don't need constant tending because they're understanding that you're going to need this moment. You're going to need weeks or months at a time where you just grind. Or keeping up the content grind, it's a little draining. It's stuff like this interview excites me. It makes me happy. Like if I could stop playing video games and just do these interviews, like no problem. I could do these conversations for like 5 decades. I'd be content, call it a day. But it's a balance. Sometimes you have to make those sacrifices, and like also I enjoy gaming. So it's like not exactly sitting there crying over playing Gwent. But it's a balance. You have to have a strong foundation if you want to do it. But I will say people take it to an extreme as well. People getting burnt out, feeling terrible about even if they're really successful. They feel you have to find that inner peace, that inner happiness of what you're grinding towards. And if you can't do that, if you feel like you're not going anywhere, you need to really reflect if you're on the right path, because you can't. Please.
Have you struggled with that sort of the numbers and the aspiration? Like, have you felt like I need to get to this level or I need to achieve this at this point? Or has there ever been times when you're feeling down about it and this kind of feeling, or have you been able to avoid it?
Yes, no, there's 100% true. Because before I started streaming Gwent, I tried 2 other ideas. I tried a financial YouTube channel, before that, a financial live stream. But my initial ambition to quit my job last July was to teach people personal finance. Because I discovered personal finance is really easy. People just aren't taught it. And I thought I could teach it. Very good at that. I am still very good at that. Brushing my ego up a little bit. But I failed those ideas. And I used to be obsessed with numbers and trying to grow, and I failed them both. So like, half a year I'm sitting on 2 failures. I'm like, facepalm. I started streaming Gwent as an outlet to my failures and struggles with the financial YouTube, where I'm just like, look, I'm getting burnt out. I'm not making any progress. I'm putting out multiple videos a week and nobody likes them. And so I just need another creative outlet to keep my mind engaged. And I've done minor amounts of Gwent streaming when it was in beta. Might as well kick it back into gear. And then that started taking success. And I was trying to avoid this route because I thought this would be the hardest of all the routes. Because streaming video games, holy crap, is it competitive. As you mentioned, everyone's grinding like a lunatic. Where people don't understand what goes into it. And also I think it's part of why I think these interviews are fun. Because we get to say, oh yeah, yes, this person's playing 60, 70, 80 hours a week on this, like in sacrificing, or their relationships can't be daily. How are you going to sit, if you sit there and like, I'm going to be a big Gwent streamer or a big streamer, I'm going to stream 20 hours a week. Like, if everyone's playing 60, 80 and you're going 1/4 the speed. I think there is a lot of depression, but I think it goes back to that very first thing we talked about. Sorry, I'm talking a lot now, but that very first thing we talked about, where you look back at your life and say, what did I do? And every time I go there, that's where I find my peace, where I find like satisfaction. Oh, I was pursuing this really interesting, wholesome community where people talk about big ideas. You get to see behind the scenes and the people you hire. You get to learn something to improve your life. Like that for me is very satisfying. And even if I'm putting in all this work, and some of it I'm like, some days I'm at the end of a stream, I'm like, oh my gosh, if I have to play another Tunnel or Line Pocket Syndicate deck that drops Tunnel Drill in round 3, I'm going to just explode mentally, and then followed by Cloggers and just getting killed by Cloggers and Tunnel Drill. I'm just like, why? I'm like, go back to that inner peace, go back to that foundation grind. But I will say a lot of people to try to make it here do unhealthy things. So it's a dangerous game. It's a bouncing game. You have to really know yourself to do it. And I don't think I do a great job of it either. I've had my own breakdowns along the way too. So like, I sound so confident, but I struggle as well. You find that as well?
Yeah, it's tricky, isn't it? I think the perfect balance is when you can sort of get lost in it, but it doesn't feel painful. And sometimes you get into that state where everything is just you pump out all the content, and you're like, yes, that felt really good, and I feel really good. I feel tired and stuff, but it's like a good kind of tired, right? After you like exercise or something.
Yes.
And
satisfying.
Yeah, that's. I don't know how. The hard thing is like keeping that feeling. Like it's really hard for that to just, especially if you want to be doing it at the maximum, right? Like really, doing as much as the other people that are grinding a lot and stuff. So.
I feel
tricky game.
It's tricky. I feel that it's really one of the things I find so good and so bad is the numbers aspect of it. Because there's a point where I say, oh, if I keep my current pace, I'm going to be at this number of subscribers, this number of followers, viewers. I'll be financially stable, let's say in a year-ish. That's probably accurate. Like, I look at that and I'm like, well, what does it do to all my thoughts, effort right now? I'm easily projecting it all. I'm probably going to be accurate, or roughly, unless I have a blow up, and I'm going to try to engineer that along the way. But like, a lot of likes there. Cut that out. But that almost trivializes the experience. That's you're not really living the moment to moment. If I sit there and say, "Oh, John, just grind for a year, you'll be here, done," I find that to be it reduces my satisfaction, even though it's probably accurate, because the surprise is gone.
I think in some way it comes back to passion, right? And it's like. Like for me, again, I prefer to have the passion and then it works towards the goal naturally, rather than seeing the goal and then having to do the things that work towards it, right? And maybe finding passion along the way, and in some way. But like in order to achieve goals, you sometimes have to battle through it and not feel the passion the whole time, right? And
it's
one thing.
No,
one thing that is I've just been like not looking at numbers on Twitch, for example, while streaming, and it's just such a, like for me that is such a more pleasant experience, because otherwise you're like always thinking, how many people are watching? Oh, there's less than usual. What am I doing wrong? Maybe I need to, like.
Oh, I feel that all the time. And then some days it just blows up. I remember it was you right after the expansion, like day 2 of the expansion. Everyone is streaming it, but the expansion hype started to die. I was like, wow, my viewers are falling off because you're streaming, Life Coach is streaming, Shinmuri's on, Spiro's on, and all these people are on. I'm like, yeah, this is a problem. Then that Saturday hit and everybody stopped. Like, there's Bushy and me, and I was sitting there like, I'm having 2x number of viewers, and I'm just sitting there saying, I have no control. But I still look, which is not good. I would really like to get better at not looking. But I really don't have as much control as I would like to think, other than do your best content and find satisfaction in that. and maybe on a
Mm-hmm.
macro level evaluate. But I'm not good at that. I still have those emotional moments like, oh, 40 people are watching. I really need 70. Oh, 150 people are watching. I'm doing so
Yeah.
good. ah.
Yeah, it's bizarre as well, right? Especially with streaming, like, because we're not really getting very much, like, the difference in like 70 viewers or something is not a difference financially, really, in any way.
No.
It's just sort of a pure,
hmm
unless you maybe
Oh
it's different for
no.
you, but I think.
So I'm like super out there. I never signed up for Twitch affiliate. So because I sat there and said, okay, they're gonna put ads on my channel. Like having 5 viewers, getting it like fine, I can get that. But having 5 viewers watch an ad and one person sub to me and giving me $250 a month is not gonna exactly change my current financial situation of John needs $24,000 a year to live. Based on where I'm at in my United States and how I spend my money. So I could potentially, if I really need to continue this, move somewhere cheaper. I'm not exactly an expensive place as part of the United States, but okay, so like 250 is not going to move 24K. Even 100 subs for $250 a month is not going to move significantly. It's closer to progress, but that's kind of the funny part of it all, where you need a lot to move it. Streaming is not super sustainable without really big numbers. So I don't find that like 40 to 75. I don't think is how I approach streaming mentally. Or I mean, I still get obsessed with numbers day to day because it's so right in your face. You can see it any second. I can look right now. Oh, how many viewers have we got? Oh, we have 85. But is it because of the specimen you made or because of the interview? I don't know. Is it a good number or a bad number? I don't know. But I think paradoxically, the way you move it is actually the thing I almost want as well, where I have a strong passion and drive to build out non-gaming forms of content that can really help people's lives. And so if I'm able to, it's almost like if I could be a popular gaming streamer would make a bunch of money, or like a small streamer that produces sustainable but produces this more wholesome content, I'd pick the latter. So it's almost like kind of like a paradox. It's like it's almost not about the viewers, it's just about can you get to a point in your life where you're stable producing stuff you love. And the 40 to 50 to 60 viewer range isn't going to really change it. It's what that end result is. Can you, like how many viewers it matters is just a factor in it, but it's that end result that matters. I think it's how I kind of rationalize it.
It's all weird as well because even the end result, like what is it that you want from it? Like the sustainability isn't probably tied to the number of people watching necessarily, right? Like
No.
it's all a bit like you could have 500 viewers or 1,000 viewers, you might still make less than somebody who has 100 viewers and a lot of subs, for example, right?
Yeah. 100%.
So it's just sort of all an ego thing that doesn't really, we're getting tricked into thinking the numbers matter here.
Yes. It's because at the end of the day, it's just like, can you do what you want to do? That's all we're really asking. It's like the nature of life to an extent. But yeah, the numbers, they get you occupied. Are you partner or not partner? Are you affiliate or not affiliate? Are you just not, nobody watching? Is everybody watching? And then finding happiness in that, because I know some people who are huge streamers hate their audiences. And can you imagine having to wake up each morning like, I'm going to go entertain 10,000 people who I hate because they're going to give me money for it. That would be miserable. That would be miserable. I mean, wait, what's the other comment? Oh yeah, for the have you ever heard of 1,000 True Fans? Have you ever heard of that?
I haven't. Is this a reference? No, I haven't.
No, it's like a blog post. You can Google it. It's very similar in terms of money, where if you can get 1,000 people give you $10 a month, you're gonna have an unbelievably great salary of $120,000. So you don't need. You can have 30, 40, 50,000 people watching you, but if I can just get 1,000 people, give me $10 a month on a Twitch sub and Patreon combined, and ads combined, done. That's it. And like you don't have to have 1,000 people watching there. You can have like 100 at a time. But if they're cycling in, right, they don't have to be obsessed with you. Then you're gonna work out. But I think there is ironically that numbers game of like your pride is numbers, and I think it's not just Twitch, but it manifests in society too. That bank account, right? How much money are you making each day? How much do you have invested? How nice is your car? How's the size of your house? But these are just numbers. But the actual
how many likes on social media?
Oh my gosh, yeah. If you get less than 10, like what are you doing? I think it's all really true. We as humans like blowing things out of numbers. but it comes back to, can you sustain what you like to do within, or go into ethics, live your ethical life, however you pick it. You have to go back, loop back. It all loops back to that first conversation. And it's a weird grind to try to manage, and also the society pressures you, right? YouTube tells me right now, like, oh, your viewership's up, keep it up. I'm like, I'm gonna work on it, but it also requires me like going slowly insane. It's a balance. So it's tough. Do you have any advice for keeping up that grind, because you've done a lot of grinding and managing
the thing with me is like I actually did the proper grind, right, of like streaming like as if it were a job, because I was on an esports team for a bit.
Nice.
And I had to do a certain amount of hours to to stay on the team and to fulfill the requirements to get paid and whatnot. So I did that grind, and it just became so soul destroying, right, and so so rubbish. So I don't know if I can I don't know if it's good to do that grind. You know what I mean? Like there must be a way to do it, but you've got to do it in a way that is very satisfying and very happy and gives you time to pursue other things you want to pursue. And yeah, that's the difficult thing with streaming. And I think it's not something there's not an easy solution, because you do get rewarded for just mashing your head into the just bashing your head against the wall and doing it very, very regularly and consistently. But that's the thing, it's rewarded, but it's not healthy. So
and it's
work out what you want to do, really.
Like when you see like a big streamer do that grind and then burn out, like, was that worth it? Was this goal you achieved really what you wanted the whole time? That's what I find interesting about like financial independence. Like when you're not bound by a paycheck, some of these people still chase it anyways. I looked at what's a good example? Maybe none come to mind, but there are a number of creators who just have plenty of money, and they could back off the grind and just have probably a happier life, but they're so engaged in doing this unhealthy grind because they find their purpose in it, and it makes no sense, and it's just self-destructive.
Yeah. I mean, at the same time, you don't want to. It's difficult, right? If you ever let your foot off the pedal a bit, then it can all just come crashing down a bit, and then you just can't find the motivation to do it again, and it can all fall apart. So I can kind of understand that feeling of I need to keep with the purpose and keep it going, right, rather than allowing it to sort of fade at all. But
it's amazing. It's nervous. It's that identity in that sense. And I think we see it also culturally, where a lot of people's first questions when they talk to people is, "Hey, what do you do as a job? Like, what's your job?" There's a sense of purpose in what you do. Oh, I'm a streamer, and to be a streamer, you need to grind 8,000 hours. So I'm gonna grind 8,000 hours. So that when I'm asked, "Hey, what do you do?" "Oh, I'm a streamer. I put in the time." And there's pride in that too, where people are like, "Oh man, I pulled 2 all-nighters in a row to get this, study for this exam or finish this project or something." But like, there should be no pride in that. It's just like, oh, you must have really messed up your time management or bit off more than you can chew in a healthy manner. But you did it, and maybe you feel more progressed, but at what cost? There's probably more to life than the grind.
Yeah. It's really weird. Like,
no, it is super
I guess
weird.
Nothing.
Anyways, so I have still a couple more topics, if you're so good, which is how we got to this topic was talking about prepping for a tournament. Well, I want to dive in a little bit more. We dived into touch at the beginning about what happens after a tournament. Like, what do? You have these negative emotions. You slowly resolve them. Like, then what? Because you have abundance of time. How do you fill the time? What are you trying to? Do you set little goals? Do you just like, tell me about that. It's got to be kind of surreal.
I mean, to be honest, mate, in general in life, like, I'm not waking up. Like, my sleep schedule just doesn't really. It's not really a thing. I just sort of wake up whenever I feel like it, and probably people are very jealous of that, right? Like, I think a lot of people, that idea of like, it would be very cool to wake up whenever, and it is. It's really cool. I like it, and that's why I do it. I don't know. I think I also why am I even talking about waking up? I don't know.
Okay, it seems on your mind.
What do I do afterwards? Well, I usually just take a bit of a break, to be honest. But after this tournament, I was feeling like I need to just keep going because otherwise I'll lose myself a bit and not really sure, not really
Interesting.
be sure what to do with myself. So
Dive into that. It sounds like a very different approach than your other tournaments. Sounds like after your tournaments, you kind of kick it back, you relax, you kind of treat yourself to an extent. You wake up
hmm
whenever you want. You're not waking up like I gotta grind. You're out of that obsessive phase. You're not focused on winning a tournament. This one sounds like you're taking it differently. What's motivating that?
uh, it's just like it's because this tournament for me was the last sort of hurdle, right? And then there's nothing on the horizon now for me, so I have to create something new. And if I just fall back into like the patterns of just waiting for something, then
Hmm.
nothing will happen really. So I feel like I have to keep pushing, right?
Do you have to or do you want to?
I mean, both, I guess.
Okay.
I
Well, you
have
know,
to in order to achieve what I want to do, I guess. Is
what
how
do
it's.
you want to achieve right now? Because you just finished up probably the biggest Gwent tournament of all time. So, what do you want to
Uh,
do? Because I feel like that was early on in our conversation, kind of up in the air. Talked about a couple different things,
yeah, yeah.
but you
I
seem
mean, I
to.
suppose it's more like a short-term thing, right? Of just I want each day to feel like I've done something, and it's been like I can soak in the feelings of productivity and creativity and like all this, like I've been doing stuff right, and I'm just sort of trying to hang on to that feeling
Hmm.
until the next thing comes along. Otherwise, I'm just going to be wallowing in sort of I mean, not wallowing, but I'm just going to be not feeling those positive vibes, right? And
Interesting.
then be looking for something, but then it's harder to catch on and grab a new thing if you're already not feeling productive and stuff. So,
So how? Let me ask a tangential question that would help me get a bit of the bigger picture. How long have you
hmm
known that you were gonna want, or how long have you known that you wanted to compete in Gwent Masters? Like, how long has this tournament been a goal?
I mean, really, since I qualified for it, I wasn't even. It
How
was
long ago
more
was
just
that?
the.
Hmm.
This was, I guess, 3 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah, 3 years and a bit. So quite a long time now, to be honest.
That seems. It strikes me as really interesting where every other tournament up until then, once you decide on your goal, it sounded like there was a period of relaxation because it felt like you were. And we talked about it a little bit earlier, building up to this grand goal. And now you've done that grand goal. You did not win it, but you got second place. But of course, there's a mix of positive and negative emotions. But now it just feels like a very different period of your life, like another stage almost
hmm
of uncertainty, unknown.
Yeah, for sure.
Uh,
It's a bit scary. I don't know. And in some way, I'm just putting off the fear, right, with by streaming and doing such. But like, it is nice, I think, in some ways, to have the consistency of a job or
mhm.
of and in some way, you have, like, you're probably feeling that hope and that there's something to strive for, right? And
Yes,
there's the grass is green over there, and it's possible to get to that grass and start eating it, right? If
kind
you're
of.
a cow, like whatever.
We all might be cows. Who knows? Maybe that's the secret to it all. uh,
Yeah, exactly.
but I will say, I think for myself, it's not so much a grass is green, where I mentioned, I think earlier, like if I were to find out I was gonna, like, John, you have a terminal disease, you're gonna die in a month. Like, my accomplishments in terms of like actions would not be particularly grand in my life, but I find happiness in the fact that I was moving towards what I thought would be interesting things, where it's
hmm
not so much about getting to the grass or green or grass is greener, but simply the journey to it and agreeing to undergo that journey and trying to walk my best path towards it. That I think is
Interesting. So you,
where.
you
Mhm.
you would say that if you were terminally ill right now, would you continue doing the things that you're doing in the exact same way?
Most part, I think so. I think I would sit down and say, what? Okay, I'm now on a limited time frame. What can I do with this empathetic motivation to help people? So maybe my content would be about gaming, but also talking about death, getting more philosophical. Maybe it'd be trying to find interviews with people who have experience with death and trying to just like make YouTube content as opposed to Twitch, which is still very video game oriented. It would, I'd probably want to spend some time with my family, but I also feel paradoxically that Oh man, I hope none of them are watching this. Paradoxically, I would love to spend time creating. I think we referred to it as legacy earlier. We talked about that. Not so much like these videos are me, but like this is my last huzzah to make the impact I want to have. And all the way until now, I'm content because I've learned my own, learned about myself, follow my passions and thoughts as best I can. It led me here. Be gone in a month. Again, guys, this is fictional. But I think during that last month, it'd be like, what would I want to do with what else I have left? And try to rationalize that. And I'd probably selfishly also want to accomplish a lifelong goal. I really want to go to Antarctica. I feel like that'd be kind of cool, both physically and emotionally. So I think I would like to probably sneak in a trip there too, and figure out what that's like as well. But I think if I set my goal as I must get to the greener grass, then I'm going to be very satisfied if I don't, or unsatisfied if I don't get there, but I also might never get there, even if I live a full life. So I can't make that my goal because that's out of my control.
And even if you get there, it may be that the grass isn't actually greener after all, right? And it's just a different shade of green. It's not, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it turns out it's just different. Yeah, I think that's really good. We talked about that, different possibilities of like, oh, I can be a lawyer, I could be a sports player, I could be a streamer, whatever it is. They all have different grass colors to an extent. I do think one thing I learned the hard way, unfortunately, with weightlifting, one day I decided I was going to get fit, and I decided I wanted to hit 175 pounds, which is some amount in the rest of the world. But in the United States, it's 175 pounds because nobody else uses the system, except maybe I think one country in Africa somehow ends up on this terrible system we have in the USA. Which makes no sense. And I lost the weight, and as soon as I hit 175 pounds, I stopped working out and gained it all back. Because I had a goal and I hit the goal and I didn't care once I hit it. But I find that there's a lot more value in having a process. I want to produce this type of quality content. I want to have, and that's where I'm going to find satisfaction in. I want to work out 3 times a week, and I'll be satisfied as long as I work out 3 times a week. Don't have to be good workouts. I just have to do it. I think there's a lot of wisdom in not setting your goal being the grass is greener or necessarily even destination, but the goal should be and find satisfaction in moving in a direction that you're happy with. And working from there. It seems more sustainable to me.
Yeah, I think a lot of people probably get fixated on the goal rather than the journey, right?
Yep.
And it is,
and
as cliche as it is quite important.
Yeah, and yes, and I would even say, as Alan Watts said earlier, like life is like music. Your goal is not to rush to the end of the song, or else again, the best song would be done, right? It'd be whatever conductor can slap down the fastest. Everyone can blow into their instruments as quickly as possible, push the key on the keyboard as quickly as you can. That would be the best song of all time. But if life is like music, like that's clearly how music works. To enjoy it moment to moment. Maybe some parts you won't like as much, but trying to enjoy it the best you can. So, like maybe like a song on a radio, because you gotta get stuck with whatever's playing. But might as well find what you can that you enjoy. Change stations if you don't like that station. Yeah. That's interesting. So yeah, you're at a really interesting crossroads in your life. That's so neat.
Yeah, as are you in a sense, or maybe not so much a crossroads, but I suppose.
Kind of. I think there is some truth to it where I haven't done this before. I'm just kind of YOLOing a bit in my life, and I think the choice has been made, but the emotions are still catching up. Like last night, I dreamed I was working back a corporate job. I hated every moment of it, but it felt so secure. But paradoxically, like I wake up and I'm much happier. But man, do I feel a lot less secure than I did in the dream, right? When I sit there, I'm like, oh, John, you're on track to make $300 this month. And it's like, yeah, but you previously made $2,000 every 2 weeks, like, or like 1,000 or something like that. I was like, like, yeah, that was really nice when those paychecks hit my bank account.
Yeah, for sure.
It's different. And so I think also that has going back to another part, man, I love that this whole conversation interweaves onto itself, where we talked a bit about motivation and passion, getting a passion for something, and then ideally you get better at it and keep finding more. But in this case, I made the choice, but part of my emotions are like, John, what the heck are you doing? Your family doesn't understand, your friends don't understand. You're doing this path, and they're just kind of trying to support you the best they can. They don't understand what you're trying to achieve. You kind of have a vague idea, but it's not been done before, so even the vague idea doesn't work, and like you failed twice already. and the emotions are freaking out. Mine's like, yeah, we're doing it. We're pretty committed. We already quit the job. Like, we're going for it. Also, I think reminding me that sometimes you have to start something, and part of you has figured it out and rationalized, and part of you is like, geez, what are you doing? I guess it's part of living and pursuing things. And I don't.
Yeah, I think that anxiety will always be there, right?
100%.
Until it's a done deal, and maybe even after that, it will be some other anxiety.
Well, I feel like it must be,
just have
right?
to sort of roll with it.
Like, I mean, the honest answer is I can cheat and just ask you, hey, Freddy, you feeling anxious right now? Are you feeling anxious about life?
About life, yeah. Life
there
is,
you go.
Life is just, that's the one thing that life always is, right? It's always stressful. It's always anxious. Like the only time it's not is when you're literally dying, because at that point, it's the end and there's no more stress in a way, right? So
yeah, well, I feel like you can kind of cheat with that thought a little bit. Like if you know you're going to die, there's a sense of peace in that. And you described it a little bit before the tournament, where there's that mentality of, oh, you know, this is gonna happen one way or another. Like it is what it is. That can help you reduce some of that anxiety. Whether it's a tournament that you're using in a tournament setting, but I think you can apply that to life. Pulling back some of the pressure, like, okay, I'm gonna give it my all, but if it doesn't work out, fine. Like it's life, there's more ahead, and just keep walking on my path and figuring it out. Is what it is.
Yeah, we're kind of a bit obsessed about controlling everything, right, and having it all work out in the way that we want, and
well, it
just kind of isn't like that.
Yeah, it's so funny about control. So Alan, I mean, I keep going back down Watts. I guess I'm really more influenced by him as a philosopher than I thought. He makes a really interesting point, though. Imagine you could dream any dream. It can be as long as you want. You just wake up. So if you want to dream, let's say it just always feels like a night, always is a day. But right before you go to bed, you can sleep and dream whatever you would like for us and feel as long as you want. So that's the first dream we'd have. I think we'd all have the same. You have all of the money, all of the power, you have all the control, you have all these beautiful people around you supporting you and loving you, and it's going to be great. But eventually, after like 5 nights of those, you might say, you know, feeling a little bored all of a sudden. I've done like the 5 nights of the power trips for like 20 years apiece in those dreams. Like, maybe I need to add a little something else, a little extra surprise, something that might not go well, something that's out of my control. And then you dream that, and you wake up, you're like, whoa, that was wild. And then you go back and fall asleep, and next day you might be like, okay, maybe it was a little too wild, dial it back. Or maybe like, you know, I need a little bit more spice in my life, and you dial it back up. There's a lot of purpose that comes from having surprises. Things a little bit out of your control and navigating it to the best of your ability. And I think the obsession of control dooms people to a less exciting life because it's hard to control life. And so what you do is you box yourself in. You don't hit your potential. You say, this is how it's supposed to be. I will not try anything else. And but if you do that, it's really boring. And you kind of wasted what else is out there, the excitement. And additionally, fun fact, they did a study. I forget what they were measuring though. They basically found workplace performance corporations was higher if you were somebody who installs Google Chrome or Firefox than if you use Safari or Internet Explorer. Because the people who are willing to switch and try other alternatives are more willing to take chances and enjoy the surprises, while people who are like take the defaults and box it in or in control don't. Anyways, I talked a lot there.
Interesting.
We got another raid. Watch Flake, thank you for the raid. I appreciate it, my friend. Appreciate it. Welcome everybody.
Nice.
Yeah, do you tell me more about your thoughts?
Yeah, you mentioned the dreaming, and it just made me think about.
Here we go again. 4th technical issue. I was
gonna say.
Welcome back.
Come back. Hi. I was gonna say, and I was thinking about lucid dreaming a little bit. I don't know if you've come across that concept.
No, I've experienced it to a certain degree. It cuts both ways, though. Tell me about your experience with it and thoughts on it.
Yeah, well, at one point I thought, I just came across it and thought that was a very cool idea. And I think we've all had sort of dreams where we've like, it's been a bit lucid, right? It's been a bit, you can control what's going on kind of, and you can, like, some of it feels manageable and almost like you have power over what's going on. And yeah, at some point I just decided I'll fucking try to lucid dream, because there are techniques that you can do which allow you to like increase your chance of actually being in control of the dream. Like you can look at your hands in the dream and see if they actually look like they're real hands, or like you can check a clock in the dream, and if it doesn't look like it would in real life, then your brain can figure out, wait, I'm dreaming now, and then you can go from there and like make stuff happen. So, and I tried that, and it actually worked, and I actually like was just controlling the shit that was going on. It was really, really bizarre. But I just never really went back to it, because it also feels like, well, in some way, once the novelty of it is gone, it's like, okay, but you know it's not real, so what's you know what I mean? Like it's just a dream. Like it can be fun and exciting, but it's like watching like a movie or something, right? It's not like a game changer. It doesn't mean your life suddenly is much better. You still have to then wake up and you have to do the actual
day-to-day
stuff.
grind. So interesting.
And one thing, like as a follower, like sometimes I'm a little bit worried, low key, that that this life that we're living is essentially like that. It's like maybe a lucid dream, right? That's just very extended, and then you're gonna wake up and realize, hold on a minute, now I have some other existence that's maybe worse than what we actually have, and it's probably not the case, but
well, no, that actually happens with coma patients, where sometimes they'll dream a second life, and I think it's a Dr. K clip again, where there's a patient that they could not, the hospital couldn't figure out why this person was depressed and struggling. We just come out of a coma, and eventually Dr. K attacks to it. He tried a bunch of different things, failed, and eventually just asked him, like, look, why are you depressed? And he's like, well, I had a wife and 2 kids, and it was a dream, but they still feel real to me, and the fact that I'm not going to see them again still feels real. Like, whoa, does that feel wild? Yeah, there is this weird, there's so many levels to this, where of like, what is real, like your thoughts, your feelings, how that interlaces, how does the dreams work? How, like, for example, have you ever woken up out of a dream crying before? You're missing something or something bad happened in it. Like that triggered real emotions in you, but it never happened. But it did kind of happen, right? Because everything in that dream did happen in that dream, and it stopped, but still have that leftover, that longingness. And there's kind of like a surreal aspect to life where there's going to be a last time you say hello to someone or hanging out with somebody. And there's, I think, a sadness to it, but it's almost a dreamlike quality to it. It's gone. Just like a dream. Dreams might last 20 minutes. And you might, in the 20 minutes, build like a lifetime and agree and all of that and then disappear. But likewise, you do the same thing of real life and people disappear. Like, it's okay for it to be sad. And maybe we'll wake up from this and it'll all be a dream. Reminds me of those things like, by the way, you're in a coma. This is the only way I could get a message to you. Please, Freddy, wake up. Right.
That stuff stresses me out so much.
Sorry. And it gets weird. There's the fact that there's like a finiteness to it all, but it's also beautiful. But it is.
Yeah, I suppose life is like a dream in some ways, right? You have a chance to do all this crazy stuff, and then at some point you wake up.
Yes.
But that's actually death, right? And,
yeah. I kind of like that, where it's kind of funny. Like, we dream for such a small part of our lives. We challenge whether that dream is there, but we dead for and don't exist for most of our lives, our existence. We have this brief bit we call life. It's like almost like a dream from death. Like, oh, not really like we're leaving death. Like, where were you in 1802? I wasn't here. I don't remember what I was doing in 1802. But and then we'll just return to that state, whatever that was. I don't really exactly feel bad about where I was in 1802. I'm like, wow, that was really crazy in 1802, man. It was like drinking or getting in gunfights. It just didn't exist. And then return to that state. It's weird. It's kind of like existential crises. And I feel like that puts that more of that pressure on our day-to-day and our time-to-time. And it goes back to why I think your crossroads so interesting right now. Now what? You've worked for 3 years. You had the chance. Did what you came to do. And now what? The pressure, this dream of a life. And
what happens in the dream, right?
Yeah. What do you want to do?
Could be crazy. Could be a bit of a boring rest of the dream. Could be traumatic.
Yeah. Just like a lucid dreaming, you get to decide what you want to do with it. But unlike lucid dreaming, you get one shot. Lucid dreaming, you get many shots. You could in your dream. You have one shot of your life. Uh,
Yeah.
wow, we've talked about a lot. I have one more topic still. I don't really get how we still have more topics, but like, it's a lighter one. It's a lighter one, which is music. You make music? That's the thing?
Casually, I'm not like some kind of music producer or something, but I do want to like get some proper equipment because I don't have. You know, I've played around bits and bobs with some programs and such, but I've never. I would like some proper software, proper
Hardware, like
yeah.
the
I mean,
mixers.
I have yeah.
Nice.
Like producing shit. Yeah. Yeah. For me, it's like a really nice creative outlet. Because you know you can just do it. I don't know. You said you play a bit of guitar, but
You play a little guitar. I'm not very good, but I still keep my nails in a way that I can finger pick, and has longer nails than the other one. This one's for pressing, picking the strings.
I think I have a similar relationship with guitar to you, which is like it just chills in the back and
Yep, there.
like I'll sometimes whack it out, but I just I
Mm-hmm.
don't know, man. Guitar's a bit of a weird one.
Yeah, guitar. I view it as like so my dad plays guitar, and he always said it's like a good friend you can always come back to. You can blow it off for 3 years, pick it back up, and get right back to it. So you know, sometimes in life I get a huge craving for it, and I'll go hard playing it guitar over and over and over, day in and day out practicing, and then sometimes it's like I'll ignore it for 2 years. Fine.
The thing that annoys me with guitar is you have to like
Calluses.
it kind of hurts the fingers, right?
Yeah.
And you want the calluses there so that you can actually do it without it being painful. Like that's the struggle for me is I want to play for like a couple of hours or an hour or whatever, right? But then it's like my fingers are fucking dying and I have to build that strength back up, and it's like
because you're just pushing your.
Can't just pick it up and
No, it's not like the piano, because this piano doesn't hurt you back. But you're right, you have to keep slamming the metal strings, digging into your flesh until your body's like, oh, you're gonna keep slamming metal strings in those areas. Fine, we'll harden up the flesh around there, so we don't constantly have potentially blood or bruises on the ends of our fingers all day. Which is actually a problem I have to endure because my grandma wants me to play guitar, and I'm seeing her in July, and I haven't played guitar in ages, so my hands are soft and pudgy. I'm like, all right, time to go get some like paint on my hands for a while to get my calluses back so I can play a little something more. So funny. Do you think music will ever be something that like is your next passion? Because right now you've done the competitive gaming side. Naturally, gaming and streaming are adjacent, but music's over here. You like it? How does that fit into it?
Yeah. I've definitely thought a lot about it. I have a feeling like if I were to do music, it would just feel very disappointing for a long time, and I think in some way, music's not a competition really, is it? It's more just something that other people would have to discover and enjoy from you, and you know, I don't think you have a huge amount of control over that.
No, I'm
but
sure compared to competition, like you have a lot more control there.
But yeah, I think it would be a really cool thing and I was I was toying with the idea of like making Gwent songs and stuff, and I don't know if it's kind of feeling like it might just be a bit too cringy. And
you know what? I'm all about that cringe. Remember, when Mr. Habla dropped his meme cards music video, so
I quite enjoyed that video.
Yeah, I thought it was good. Mr. Habla, he sets a
sick.
high bar when it comes to production relative to me. I'm just cutting up videos, shoving in games like watch me play. Of course, we do this as well. It's also very different.
Yeah, Habla's always stuck out to me as a guy that could be very successful, like doing, like I feel like Gwent sort of under, like
appreciates him.
He could achieve more in a different setting. Do you know what I mean? Like Gwent is too low of a ceiling for him, I feel like.
I would agree. I think because he was actually the first person I interviewed. So there was an interview of him, and he's a film student, and the fact that he can make funny, interesting videos about this game, he could do that about other games where there isn't competition. So if he were to start doing that for Hearthstone or Counter-Strike, maybe a bit cringy, but he'd have a higher chance of a broader audience because he's already one of the biggest YouTubers for Gwent. He could go much bigger if he's focusing on that elsewhere, if he wants to do it. But of course, his priority right now is school.
Yeah.
I feel bad when he spends like 4 hours on a skit trying to edit it, make sure it looks great for his video. I sit here, I'm like, all right, I'm just gonna dump you in the middle of the game because I know you're just gonna watch it. Like, we're good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hope
Yeah.
I would love to see him brought out too. But if he wants that, whatever floats his boat, you know. But I think give it credit
Yeah,
for
that's
what.
another. There's a topic there about sort of Gwent and like this is something I've thought about a lot, but it seems like quite a limiting thing as well if you're into
Mhm.
content creation because it's
Correct.
quite about just be good at the game, play the decks, you know.
Uh-huh.
There's not a huge amount of room for, or like the creativity is not really so much rewarded as it is in other genres, other games, other styles of video, I think.
Kind of.
Um,
So it's kind of like a paradox. Gwent is a great game to start streaming with, and it's a terrible game to keep streaming with if you're trying to
yeah, yeah,
grow as a
exactly.
content creator. Because there are no one streams Gwent, and the community is super kind, welcoming. Seems to be Masters really spiked up for a bit, so I'm hoping it keeps growing. Life Coach hopefully is back, bringing another 1,000 people. Uh, but paradoxically, there is a hard ceiling, right? So Spiro, uh, he mentioned on when I was interviewing him that money's tight. He's able to be a full-time Gwen competitor, content creator, but it's still tight. Like the ceiling is high, and
Hmm.
he is by far the biggest in the group. He streams this full time, and really not much else. Just Spiro's Gwent through and through. But it is tough,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
So you're not people. The top streamers in Hearthstone are going to be doing a lot better.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
hopefully the game grows, but if the game doesn't grow, it's kind of tough where you hit a limit. Like a Mr. Hovla of more creative content could maybe pick up not only still low competition elsewhere, but a lot more viewers. And but also the tough part about streaming is it's very trapping. So how many people,
Mm-hmm.
if you're used to just streaming Gwent, making Gwent content, make all this Gwent content, and then you try to pivot elsewhere, what percentage of people who watch you for the Gwent content are really watching it for you versus the percent that's just Gwent? Which is
Yep.
it's the difficulty of being content creator.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, to be honest, I think every game has that
Mm-hmm.
sort of
I agree.
aspect to it, right? It's just in other games you're going to have a bigger audience maybe, and then that audience, if 1% of 100,000 people switch, then it's with you, then it's a lot more, right?
Yep. And I mean that's the
Than
power of
Gwent.
someone like
So.
Life Coach who just shows up 1,000, right? Life Coach's audience is
Hmm.
incredible. You look at the offline TV group, a lot of them have big ones, but when Among Us was popular, they were 3xing their audiences. But as soon as Among Us
Yeah.
died down, people got a little bored of it, like their audiences disappeared because a lot of their people there were for the interaction on Among Us, but nothing else. And that
Hmm.
is
Hmm.
also difficult because they could be reproducing the exact same content or exact same quality of content, but X number of people are here for this. If they're not going to produce exactly this, they'll lose that viewer. Part of
Yeah,
the
yeah.
difficulty here. Mm-hmm.
I think in some way it just shows like how much is out of control of the individual's hands, right?
Uh huh.
Like, and how important it is what game you're playing or what like it's mostly just about your dedication to whatever it is and then how that actually shapes up in terms of viewership and people
I
and whatnot,
think
right?
I'm be careful with the word dedication. I think dedication to I want to pull this off, and I know the sacrifice is required is part of it. A lot of it is also though, am I thinking about this properly? Somebody sat down and said, "I'm a silver player in League of Legends," which is like average at
Hmm.
League of Legends,
Hmm.
and there are thousands plus streamers of League. You could stream that for the rest of your life, no one will ever notice. And
True, true, true. Yeah.
but there's a mental game to it all, but there's also still a lot out of your control, right? I can do everything right and still lose. That kind of a world is rough.
Hmm. Hmm.
um,
Yeah, it's interesting. I do feel like with Gwent, it is one of those unique opportunities where you could do everything right and it just pays off, right? Like I
yes.
think
When
you can kind of see it coming, right? You can see, oh, this pro player is streaming Gwent. Well, they're gonna be up to a few hundred viewers in no time, probably, just because
yes,
they can just do that.
yeah, Saber I think is a good example of that. He just hit
Yeah,
1 year
yeah,
about a year not too long ago. He's like, oh, a couple hundred, and I'm sitting here. I'm like, okay, I'm 7 months in, John. You're at 75, which is good, but I'm not
yeah.
a pro Gwent player, and so it's one of the characteristics that can help you being really good at a game.
Hmm.
I'm
Hmm.
fine. I'm pro rank, but like, I'm not in the mood to do the grind. But also, my ambitions is not purely video game streaming till the day I die.
Hmm.
More like the
Hmm.
interview stuff catches my eye, the non-gaming content.
Yeah, yeah.
But
Yeah.
we each have to all walk these random paths and see where they pay off. But I also think that one of the paradoxes you get, if you get too attached to a game, you get stuck in the game. That is tough. Where if you only stream Gwent and you're sitting there saying, okay, how do I grow from here? All of a sudden you have to say, oh, I have to lose a third of my audience, 2/3 of my audience, and try a different game with a higher cap. And what does that look like, and how much I'm willing to give up to do it? Tough.
Yeah. Yeah. Also, if you're depending on it for living, right? Like you can.
That's the worst.
You build it up and then you get trapped, and then you're like, well, now I can't even switch because then I won't pay bills. So, you know, a guy like Spyro or something is kind of in a bit of a
tough spot.
Like, if he was in my position, he could probably just, I'm gonna play whatever game, right, and just grind it up, and then.
Correct. But if you're not financially secure, where you can do, if you can't do nothing and you'll eventually run out of money, you have to be trying to navigate. There's a point where you say, oh, I can pay all my bills playing this game and build up a little bit of savings. Maybe I'll just grind that out because I like this game. Like in my position, I'm always losing money, but I'll change that. But I'm also at a point where I can still pivot very easily because I know what I'm trying to build up to, and it's just like, oh, the shot isn't, oh, John, you made it at Gwent, you're done. Like, no. If I'm stuck playing Gwent for the next 20 years, I'm gonna go crazy. I love Gwent. Don't love it that much. Maybe I was tournament grinding.
So what is your aspiration? What goal are you gonna try to hit before the pivot?
So I hit. Oh man, it's so funny. All right, so I'm gonna end up talking a bit here. So the first goal I set out was in December. I'm grinding at the streaming, and I'm realizing that streaming is somehow taking off where everything else I tried failed, and I thought this one was the hardest of them. I'm starting to get some regular viewers, and I'm like, what the heck is going on? Now I know Gwent stats for streaming are incredible. Like if you're gonna stream any game, just stream Gwent, guys. Just don't stream League, don't stream Counter-Strike. If it's popular, don't stream it. Just stream Gwent, guys. It's like the best game to stream, unless you're like professional in another game. It is 10 out of 10. You just make sure you're hitting pro rank. You should, or rank 1, and then decline pro rank regulations and don't talk about that. So do one of those two, and you'll be fine. So my ambition, though, building up to it is. Well, first goal I wanted to hit was 75 average because that's what it qualifies for applying the partner. I just got rejected from a partner yesterday. I applied yesterday, applied 2 days ago, rejected yesterday. It's the first app. I don't care. Who cares? 75, let's say 50 subs out of the 75 viewers, which would be a ton. It's a step, right? It doesn't move a needle too much. Except I will say, getting all the support will be so warming and heartwarming. So don't, for chat, if you're sitting there like, John doesn't care about us. I'm like, I do. Your support and subs mean the world. Someday I'll get you the sub button, I promise. But that's okay. So like I've been thinking about it a lot. Like, okay, my goal really was like partner is part of it, but I really want to make this wholesome community. So I think my next goal, I'm gonna try to hit 1,000 average viewers in a year's time, or fully sustainable, one of the two. And so that I think is gonna be the next adventure. That bar is like whoosh, but I feel like I need to do a whoosh kind of bar. But I'm thinking like, okay, I'm already hitting I kind of hit the goal first. I didn't get partner, but I'm 75. The goal is to do it by the end of July. I'm not there. And I think I'm just going to accelerate the goal and make the tough choices that will encourage me to hit that 1,000 in a year. Mostly the product is what I want, not the number. I really want the wholesome community of people engage in the conversations like this without having to like watch this. Where in Discord they have these conversations in a polite, kind way. We're having that now. Where there are building out the resources for the community that if you don't know investing, it's okay. I've made a whole Wikipedia page for it. Let's just, read that. Here are the resources for this Plain Talk family, as I refer to the Plain Talk John community. Plain Talk family, like, here's all your resources, build that out. And like, if I can do that, I'll be content. That's the ambition. At least that's the next step. Make it sustainable. Have a decent reach. I don't want to be like 30K, but let's aim for a K because, ambition's good. And then start building out those resources. So that all the people in the community are saying, wow, my life's getting better. Also, paradoxically, if I teach you how to invest and you make $10,000 a year, you can give old Johnny $10 a month. And like, that'll be fine. So I think it also feeds onto itself. So let's, step by step. That's my current ambition. And do you have any ambitions right now locked in for you? I know you're still kind of deciding it, but do you have any inkling?
I don't have any ambition in terms of viewer numbers or subscribers or something. I don't like putting that pressure on because I just feel like it's I mean, you should probably do it if you are committed to a grind, right? I mean, or not probably should do it, but it's fine to do it.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, it's just like I'm not sure I want to grind that much, so
Yep.
I'm not gonna then get those numbers. So then, what's the point of putting that
Right.
expectation, right?
Yeah. Numbers
But
are.
yeah, I don't know. I should probably think of some goal to have, but it's more just like do whatever, try to qualify for a tournament maybe, then have some passion for the tournament, maybe try to win it,
Uh-huh.
whatever, do the next thing that comes. Like I'm just sort of fluid with it. I don't really, yeah, I don't
Seems
really
kind
have
of
some.
interesting. It's kind of like I feel like you're at two approaches where you can say I'm gonna default back to what I usually do, which is get another tournament. So Gwent Masters, the goal would be then maybe the next Gwent
Mm-hmm.
Masters, go for that, right? Whatever that's gonna be. But alternatively, I feel like there's also an interesting opportunity to learn another way to set a goal. Of how do I set a goal that's not like rigid on numbers? Like, I find satisfaction about other people. Like, other people can't be involved. It can't be my ranking. Just satisfaction day in and day out. That gives me the structure I'm looking for. Because at the end of the day, you want to feel good about yourself. You want to say, sit down and be like, wow, I worked really hard today. Maybe you're the only person who saw you
Yeah,
do the hard work, but
yeah.
I find it really interesting that
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know. I feel like it's so
Could be
interesting.
music related, could be
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be a
yeah, I
primary
don't know.
goal, but like you could say, like I want to produce one song and put it on Spotify, and that's it, full stop. I don't even have to put it on my Twitter. Don't tell anyone about it. Could you
Hmm,
find
hmm.
satisfaction there? Like, what mentally would it take for me to find happiness in that? That'd be so neat. I don't know. Just pass a thought, a challenge of sorts. And you set a
Yeah,
goal
no,
without the
for sure.
competition.
Like I think I mean it's honestly a cool idea, and I think the scary thing for me would be doing like producing some music and sharing it with the audience that I already have, right? Because
Uh huh.
that's a bit of a daunting
Stretch.
prospect. But I like the idea of just doing stuff that fulfills you and is not adherent to anyone else, because on some level there is no need for that, right?
Yep.
In my shoes. So yeah, that could be a goal. I don't know. I kind of like the idea of playing another game now that you suggested it. Sounds
Nice.
quite
Well, then go for it. You can also
sounds
do.
exciting.
Could be. You could also do a whole series like Freddy Explore games, and you just pop into different card games, try to say, "Oh, I really like this mechanic. I'm missing this from Gwen. This is really bad." I don't know. It depends
Hmm,
on how
hmm.
you fathom it. But I also worry that from our conversation, that you'll find an interesting roadblock of you start playing a game, you start getting average ranked, and you're like, "Man, do I really want to do the grind to be pro?" And then that's a huge
Yeah,
undertaking. Um, that
yeah,
it'll be interesting
yeah.
if you ever. I'd be curious if you ever find something that's like a 3 year tournament or a tournament 3 years away that you're gonna grind for.
Hmm.
That's like that might be a once in a lifetime unless you want to do Gwent Masters again. But I don't think it'll be quite the same as the first one or this one.
Yeah, yeah. That's the other thing, right? Like by the time you're playing a lot and getting up to a good level, you don't even really know what the future will hold for the competitive scene of that game. So,
Uh huh.
um, yeah,
Yeah, I
I don't
think
know. It's a lot of interesting questions and
yeah, but it's
no easy answers.
no easy answers indeed, and I'm confident you'll answer it. Or at least you'll try to find the answer. Uh,
Thanks.
are there any other topics
I
you want to
hope
talk
so.
about? Oh, I know. So don't say I hope so. You got this, easy peasy. You got this in the bag, Freddy. Don't go like, oh, I hope so. Like you're not gonna. You figure
Yeah,
you gotten this
let's
far.
go.
Yeah. I mean, worst comes to worst, just do another Gwent tournament while you continue to find yourself. Like that's not the end of the world. That's go crush Kulamon, put him back at remind him who's really in charge. It'll be fine. But while you seek other stuff too, it'll be good. What else is on your mind? What else do you want to talk about? What else am I missing, Freddy?
I don't know. To be honest, I'm a little bit tired.
No
It's getting a
problem.
bit late, and I should probably eat some food. So
Then why don't we go
seems
ahead,
to me like it's a good place to
wrap it
end
up?
the chat. But
Perfect. And Freddie, let's go ahead and wrap it up. Go get your food. But I want to say thank you so much for having such an insightful conversation. I feel like we got
yeah,
through
you too.
a lot of awesome topics. And thanks again, guys. Definitely check out Freddybabes on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, uh, maybe someday Spotify. On the it'll be good. But thank you so much.
Yeah.
Any
That
final
was a
words you want to
really
say? Hmm.
just a really lovely chat. So thanks for having me on, and yeah, that's it.
Perfect. Until next
Good luck
time.
with all of the future endeavors. I'm sure you're going to smash it because you're doing something very cool here, and I think you're a cool guy. So
Flattery. Warms my heart. I had a great time chatting with you. I thought we hit. It was a lot of fun for me on a very personal level. Well, again, Freddie, thank you so much. And time for me to, I guess, end the call. Because I don't know another way to smooth transition out of this one other than push the button, you disappear, and that's it.
Yep. All right then, mate.
All right. Until next time.
I will see you then.
Yeah, I'll see you around, my friend.
Have a good one.
You too. Bye. Thank you so much to Ahmed Ali and Pamzosaurus for all their support on Patreon.